Recipe for Murder CBC Mystery Project. The hero, Jean-Claude, is a young sous chef living in Montreal. In the first episode, A Sweet Death, the police arrest his close friend, Georges-Luc, who is from Haiti, charging him with murder. Jean-Claude proceeds to investigate on his own. A sweet death indeed, for this episode deals with the making of chocolates, all sorts, and the descriptions are heavenly.
And this week we're starting a series of stories about a young student chef in Montreal, Jean-Claude Gagnon. He's about to find that there are dangers in the kitchen beyond botulism. Written by Don Druick, the series is called Recipe for Murder. Jean-Claude leads us into his own surrealist world of friends, fancy cooking, relations, and murder. The first play is called A Sweet Death, starring Salvatore Migliore as Jean-Claude.
I was doing a shift at Jules, working in the kitchen, making chef salads. What else? I wasn't feeling too great.
Aha! What? Sneezing on the food. No good, boy, pas correct. Go home. I'm in enough trouble with you.
Another winter. I was freezing, aching all over. The number 80 bus ground slowly up the Avenue du Parc hill. So hot and crowded on the bus. I began to consider the possibility of fainting. It was a relief to get off on Saint-Viateur. I did some shopping on the way. My arms full of bags. I almost slipped as I turned onto Waverly. My mother heard the gate and was waiting by the door, which is both good and bad. You know, that Italian mother thing.
Oh, you flu's worse, mio caro.
No, it's nothing, Mama.
Don't nothing, Nicola.
È un piccolo influenza. Not even.
Influenza. Vai a letto immediatamente.
But, Mama...
Are you hungry?
No, I ate some bagels on the way home.
But that's not enough.
I have to study anyway for my big midterm, and my candy course I'm way behind.
Well, let me know if you're hungry. It would be nothing to eat up the zucchini.
I opened my notes. Made me feel tired. Damn, prof is so boring. So mundane.
Yeah.
I'll get it.
Don't you dare go to the door, Claudino.
It was my buddy, my pal, Georges-Luc.
I'm desperate, Jean-Claude.
Something was up.
I'm sure the police are chasing me now.
He was only wearing a T-shirt and he was in a panic.
I had a coffee with Victor at Jules. Man, it was bad. That Victor thing again. He doesn't want me seeing Joyce because of the color of my skin, man. Forgot my coat there, man. I'm freezing.
Relax. It'll all blow over.
Just gotta be mad, man. Oh, yeah.
Were you expecting anyone else?
I wasn't even expecting Georges-Luc.
Oh, man.
Gotta be you.
Georges-Luc, Jean.
He's the black one.
Yeah, the black one. That's me, yeah.
You're under arrest. Come with us.
But
Why are you doing this? What has he done?
This isn't a press conference. Now, please, Monsieur Jean, no trouble?
Georges-Luc is against my own mouth.
I didn't do anything.
That's not what we heard.
I didn't even touch him.
No one said he died from a blow, boy.
Victor's dead.
Victor's
Okay.
Hey, come on. Take my coat.
You're a big Jean-Claude, man. Go see Joyce, man. Tell her what happened. I don't know what happened. Tell her I love her, man.
Well, the worst that could have happened, happened. Georges-Luc was charged with manslaughter. He'd had that hell of a fight with Victor, and he sure had a good reason to see him out of the way. That was enough for the cops, and they weren't saying much more than that. Over my mother's usual protests, I went to meet Joyce at La Cabane up on Saint Laurent.
He was such a sweet guy, Jean-Claude. I can't even focus my eyes. I can't see.
It was a tough moment for her.
Have something. A glass of wine.
I don't know. Okay.
She'd lost her father.
Whiskey?
And her boyfriend was in jail for killing him.
Double?
And who knows what else was happening.
He didn't do it, Joyce.
Are you sure?
Absolutely.
I know he didn't do it. I know.
Joyce left to go home. She wanted to be alone. Who could blame her? If I went home, my mother would make me go to bed. So, I decided to go downtown to Jules. Usually a very cool place. Now, a very depressed place. Julien was by the counter, He looked very tired.
Man, business is slow, Jean-Claude, after that guy died. Oh, what a scene.
What happened?
They were sitting over here by the window, making a lot of noise. He was acting, this Victor, really weird, strange, laughing, mad. It was a bad scene. Suddenly, this Victor is in the throes of something. What? A heart attack? What do I know? I run a bistro. Anyway, Charles called the paramedics right away. But it was too late. The poor guy was dead.
How did the police know it was Georges Luc? From the coat?
No, there was nothing in the coat. I told them. Hey, don't look at me like that. I had to tell them. And that he'd probably be at your place.
What else can you remember?
What else? I don't know. It was busy, you know? Oh, yeah. There was a box of chocolates on the table. You know those hand-drip Belgium things.
Like what?
I don't know. Maraschinos. I never cared for
Where
them.
are they?
Oh, they're here somewhere.
I think it's very suspicious that the chocolates are missing.
Evidence?
Well, where are they? Did someone take them? Who brought them?
Okay.
And what else?
It smelled funny.
Funny. Well, what did?
The body. Yeah. Horrible smell. A stupid smell.
Did you tell the cops?
Them? They don't care about things like that.
But...
Wait. What?
What?
I'm remembering something. Oh. Someone else met with this poor slob Victor before Georges Luc.
Who?
Never seen him before. He drank beer. That, Belgium stuff. I always keep a few bottles in the fridge. La mort subite. Sudden death. A big joke, eh?
My mind buzzed. What was the smell that Julien was talking about? Victor's smell. I went home. The répondeur was flashing. It was Julien.
Hey, Jean-Claude, it's me. I found those chocolates. The maraschinos. Anyway, they're here.
My heart raced. I called Jules. Busy. I called again. And again and again. Busy. Merde. It was getting real late. I took a chance and grabbed a cab. I can't imagine why the cabbie kept honking his horn. The streets were deserted. The bistro was locked. But I could see Julien and Charles.
This is important. I need the box of chocolates.
Charles cleaned up and threw it out, 10 minutes ago. Just in time for the garbage pickup.
Oh, no, are you sure?
I'm sure.
Well, okay, which way did they go? I've got to find them.
They're off the island by now.
This is terrible. Look, Julien, what was the smell like? Exactly like.
You mean Victor? Like almonds, but gone off or something. You're a nasty sort of smell. Bitter.
That means something. My prof was on to something the other day. What was he talking about? The maraschino thing.
Add certain ingredients, such as walnut oil, to the maraschino liqueur in which the cherries are stewed. Otherwise, a deadly cyanide-type compound
Cyanide, voila. And cyanide smells like almonds. The chocolates in the white box were poisoned with cyanide. Someone else killed Victor, not Georges Luc. But who?
I wish you had kept that box, Julien.
The evidence was on its way to some landfill far, far away. Gone. Merde. Well, there was only one thing to do. I grabbed another cab on the Maisonneuve and headed downtown to police headquarters. I can't imagine why this cabbie also kept honking. The streets were deserted. Down at headquarters, after waiting forever on a hard bench, I finally got to see a detective who actually knew what case I was on about. I filled him in on the maraschino and walnut and cyanide bit, and the other man at the bistro, and what Julian had smelt on Victor's body. All the cop did was laugh. Suddenly, all the cops were laughing at me.
Well, listen to this. I don't think it's so funny. When we were talking about someone's life.
Relax, kid. Cyanide doesn't smell like almonds. It smells like old socks.
But
when people croak from cyanide, they vomit and pass out, and their lips turn bright cherry red because the cyanide strangles them from the inside. It's not like it is in the movies, lad. We think it's a poison thing, too, but we don't know what yet.
Well, then why don't you do an autopsy?
Hey, it takes time.
Well, what about the other guy?
I know you want to help your friend, but this is a case of murder.
Murder?
Yeah, I'm afraid so. It's murder. Now, they had a fight, a big blowout, a big motive, a big opportunity. It spells murder. Okay? Relax, kid. The judge will go easy on him. Huh? He's young. Crime of passion. A few years to be out of it. Now, go home and take care of yourself. You're not looking too good.
I couldn't believe it. I was back to square one. The next morning, Joyce and I took the metro way up to the north end of the city where Bordeaux jail is. Joyce is an Anglophone and speaks no French, and English is a difficult game up in the north end. Anyway, I wanted to see Georges Luc. Maybe he would remember something useful. Something. I had never been in a jail before. I didn't like it. Georges Luc came in, wearing orange overalls. And we had to talk to him through a screen. Very bad. I looked away to let them have a moment together.
His girlfriend, you know?
So unbelievably wrong and awful.
After a while, they weren't going to let us stay there forever. I piped in.
What about the chocolates? There was a box of chocolates on the table. Julian said so.
Chocolates must be from her, the other woman.
Isabel?
I liked her.
What about her husband?
Hey, you probably know him. He's Reese de Bruin.
You mean that chocolate shop on St. Catherine? He gave a lecture in my course last month. Oh, a real artist. Even melting chocolate is a big, big deal for him.
They're going to kick us out of here in a minute.
Not all of us.
Oh, my darling.
I'll speak to Uncle Percy.
As soon as I got home, I went to Percy's room.
Who's there?
Jean-Claude.
Who? Oh, it's you. Good. Come on in. Come in.
I need your help. For the next hour, I explained the situation to him. The cyanide. He didn't laugh at me. And how badly Joyce was doing, and Georges Luc and Julien throwing out the evidence of the box of chocolates, and how much I hated Bordeaux jail and everything.
I always wanted to be a detective, you know. But things were so secure in the department for me. Safe. Maybe I was afraid I would fail the exam. Maybe I was afraid I would pass it. Who knows?
We need to know those autopsy results.
He smiled warmly at me, as he had always done,
What?
all my life.
Why are they taking so long?
I'll call my old friend in the coroner's office. Maybe they'll have something for us.
Now?
Right away. I just have to find that number.
For the rest of the afternoon, I stayed in my room and pretended to study. The phone rang about supper time. I strained to hear. Just when I could bear it no longer, Uncle Percy knocked on my door.
Finally.
Well, we have some news.
And?
An autopsy was done.
And?
And? Mr. Victor was poisoned.
I knew it. Cyanide.
Oh, no, not quite. Your cyanide theory is out the window.
What do you mean?
It was something called Belladonna.
What is Belladonna? I went to the encyclopedia. As usual, it was problematic. Too much and too little. A shrub. Part of the deadly nightshade family. Very poisonous. Well, that's obvious. Let's see. The Greeks tied it in with the fates. And they put some in their wine as an aphrodisiac. The Belladonna orgies would often lead to frenzy and murder. Wow. Wow. Something erotic. Chocolate. A beautiful woman. Something dark and romantic. So, if there is a poison, there must be a poisoner. So I thought I should go and see this Reese de Bruin. The next morning, as early as I could, I went down to his shop. A tinny little bell rang as I opened the door. It smelled wonderful in there. Sweet. Lush. Soon a man came from the back, wiping his hands on a not-so-clean cloth, disheveled.
Reese de Bruin.
He scowled at me,
you?
as if I had interrupted something important.
I'm taking that course at the CEGEP that you talked to last month. Your lecture on chocolate was very inspiring.
You were in that class.
I want to be a chef.
Well, here. Try this.
I pulled back.
Merci, but no.
I insist.
I'd rather not.
He seemed a bit hurt.
Taste this praline and tell me what you think.
No, it's too early in the day for me.
It was my favorite chocolate flavor.
Again?
Still, I couldn't take the chance.
Where did you learn this?
I apprenticed in Brussels at Chez Newell on the Avenue Louise. You don't know it?
No. No.
Pity. With Maître Lambre, the best chocolate maker in Belgium.
Things were going well.
Make you fat.
I was wondering how I should shift the conversation to something useful. When a beautiful red-haired woman came in from the back.
Where's the almonds we received yesterday?
She saw me and stopped. I stared at her.
This is a young colleague from the CEGEP.
Jean-Claude Gagnon.
How do you do?
This is my wife, Isabelle.
Oh, was this Victor's lover?
Colleague.
Her eyes met mine and stayed there.
We met.
I doubt it.
There was something strange about her that I couldn't figure out.
Why are you looking at my wife like that?
I'm sorry, mate. Was I being offensive?
Things had reached the point where there was nothing more to be gained unless...
Do you ever flavor your praline with herbs?
Herbs?
With, say, belladonna?
What? There was a look on his face that suddenly terrified me.
You who met with Victor at Chez Julien the other night.
Isabelle turned white. A remarkable effect considering her bright red hair.
Delectable belladonna liqueur?
No artist would do such a thing. As for Victor, he was nothing.
He grabbed my arm. It hurt. I struggled to pull myself free from his vice-like grip. I cried out.
Reese, leave the boy alone.
It means nothing. Nothing. Now leave. Leave my store. Get out. Get out. Get out!
I found myself out on the street. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Isabelle. The crazy woman didn't even have a coat on and was shivering something pathetic. I pulled her into a nearby cafe. Formica and plastic. But at least the coffee was hot.
I was all alone and Reese was there for me.
What are you talking about?
11 years ago now, almost 12. I was good for him.
Why?
He can hate so much. Himself. Everybody.
What about Victor?
It was Reese who brought the chocolates to Victor. He's insane.
You're telling me this?
I loved Victor. I owe him this.
You said you owed Reese too. She just cried. I guess she wasn't as indifferent as she thought she was. I told Uncle Percy what had happened, what Isabelle had told me. We told the detectives. Rhys de Bruyne was arrested and the charge was murder. The police found dried Belladonna berries in his shop, and the capper was Julian's identification of Rhys as the man in the bistro that night with Victor before Georges-Luc had shown up. Georges-Luc was absolved and freed. Joyce and I went to get him at the jail. My mother gave me some money, and this time we took a taxi. We ended up at our usual, like a band.
Belladonna is such an odd choice.
Maybe we should drop it, Jean-Claude.
Well, something's been bothering me about all this.
Are you saying what I think you're saying?
And what is he saying?
Rhys is an artist, and an artist simply wouldn't contaminate his own creation.
That's it. You off your look, Jean-Claude.
Maybe.
Hey, who else is there?
I don't know. I really don't know.
I didn't know. It was all so wrong. Isabel seemed the only other possibility, but that was wrong. All wrong. So I walked the winter streets. It had warmed up and was snowing all the time. I like those Montreal snowy days. Quiet and snow. I had no appetite. My cold was worse than ever. It didn't matter. I just kept walking, very lonely. And then I saw her in Carré Saint-Louis. Isabelle de Bruyne. I wasn't sure at first. I moved a little closer, taking care she wouldn't see me. It was her. She seemed so lonely, too. She went into the metro station at Sherbrooke. I followed her, a shadow to her shadow. We took the train down to Berriuca, she and I. She changed to the Angrignon line. So did I. She got off at Atwater. Me too. I just waited to see what she would do. She just sat there. Sad, small, lonely little marionette. I waited. Trains came and went. She just sat there. Eventually I went and sat beside her. Trains came and went. Rhys didn't kill him.
They say he did.
They're wrong. And you didn't. Then who?
Didn't I?
What do you mean?
What is so funny?
It's all about making people love you.
Making them?
They won't do it otherwise. You'll have to give them what they want or they won't love you.
You frighten me.
I frighten myself.
You loved Victor?
I loved Victor.
Did you make him love you?
I didn't have to. For the first time, I didn't have
But
to.
you also loved Rhys.
No. Me?
Oh.
All right. I'll tell you. Rhys met Victor to tell him that I wouldn't see him again. It wasn't true. I hadn't wanted him to. But Rhys had had enough of it all. And he gave Victor the chocolates.
What do you mean?
The chocolates weren't meant for Victor. They were meant for Rhys.
Why did you use the Belladonna? Or was it because of its mysterious powers? The beautiful woman?
It was just there in a vacant lot near Atwater Market. It reminded me of my childhood. Not that much does. What will happen to me?
I don't know. So that was it? Convenient and growing in a vacant lot. Memories of a lonely childhood. We just sat there, the beautiful woman and I. Belladonna. Trains came and went. Isabel was arrested, and Reese de Bruin freed, a broken man. Reese closed his shop and disappeared. Maybe he went back to Brussels. If I ever see him again, we'll talk about sweet things. I met with Joyce and Georges Luc at La Cabane.
So, the chocolates were meant for Reese, not Victor.
Yep. Isabel just added a little something to the recipe.
But why?
Yeah.
Well, Uncle Percy did some checking for me. She killed her last foster father when she was 15. They never found her. There may have been other murders, other spouses in the time between then and Reese. We'll never know.
I feel sorry for both of them.
I could see they didn't need me around.
Guys, I've got to go study for the midterm. It's tomorrow and I've done nothing.
Hey, I wouldn't say that.
Sweet
You
people.
really helped us, me and Joyce.
Yeah.
Thank you. Really love you for that, yeah?
Thank you.
Yeah, I love you too.
They've been through a lot.
Bye.
I headed home. It had stopped snowing. I had lost some weight over the last few days. I felt good. My cold was starting to get better, and my appetite had returned. I bought a few bagels on the way. The wood fire in the bakery was warm and friendly. So were the bagels. I looked at the lights in the windows as I trudged up the street. Maybe I should move out on my own. It made me hungry just thinking that. I wondered if there was any more of that curried rabbit left in the fridge.
You've been listening to episode 1 of Recipe for Murder by Don Druick. This time a play called A Sweet Death. Salvatore Migliore starred as Jean-Claude Gagnon. The others in the cast, Danielle Desormeaux as Serafina, Terence Labrosse-Ross as Uncle Percy and Anthony Jones, Louis Nagan as Julian, Michael Rudder as André Fortin and Victor, Gordon Maston as Guy Rose, and with them, Dean Hagopian as Reese de Bruin, Martha Turgeon as Isabelle de Bruin, Jude-Antoine Jarda as Georges Luc, and Suzanne Lanier as Joyce. The original music was by Timothy Clark, and the recording engineers were Wayne Richards and Joe Mahoney. Casting by Linda Grierson. The associate producer was Colleen Woods, the associate director was Judy Kernew, and the co-producers were Tom Lopez of ZBS and Bill Lane. The play was directed on location, as we were told by the writer earlier on, by Bill Lane. The executive producer of the Mystery Project is Bill Howell.
CBC Festival Theatre The Incredible Murder of Cardinal Tosca with John Neville as Sherlock Holmes and Dan MacDonald as Dr. Watson. It is a CBC radio production of a Canadian stage play of the same name. It's a new work of Sherlock Holmes written for the stage, and then adapted to radio. It aired July 31, 1983, as part of CBC Festival Theatre.
Festival Theatre. And here is your host, William Hutt.
Good evening, and welcome once again to Festival Theatre. Tonight, we introduce to the radio audience from coast to coast one of the treasure troves of our time, the incredible murder of Cardinal Tosca, a hitherto undiscovered adventure of Sherlock Holmes. It is no secret to connoisseurs of the Wizard of Baker Street that many of the master's greatest adventures are tantalizingly referred to throughout the published works of his devoted chronicler, Dr. Watson, but the stories themselves have never seen the light of day. For over 60 years, a maddened world has tried to imagine possible connections between the politician, the lighthouse, and the trained cormorant, or guessed in shudders what the Red Leech really did to Crosby, the banker, only to be told that Watson's famous tin dispatch box, the repository of all the hidden cases, had been utterly destroyed by bombs in the London Blitz, and that the hints of lost cases must now tantalize us forever. But the time has come to reveal that the immortal dispatch box has survived and is currently in the possession of playwrights Alden Nolan and Walter Learning. Already admired for their version of Frankenstein and their powerful original play, The Dollar Woman, last winter on Festival Theater, Nolan and Learning have collaborated again to dramatize the newly discovered adventure, this time, I may add, with no intervention whatsoever from Dr. Watson's frontman, a certain Dr. A.C. Doyle. First staged last year at Theatre New Brunswick, The Incredible Murder of Cardinal Tosca comes to you now in radio version by the authors in a CBC stereo production from Halifax by Elizabeth Fox, starring John Neville as Holmes, with Dan MacDonald as Dr. Watson. Come with me now to the vaults of Cox and Company at Charing Cross, London, to a certain tin box where a beloved, now recovered ghost is rising. You'll recognize him easily. It was not for nothing that the master called him the one fixed point in a changing world. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to reintroduce Dr. John H. Watson.
Mr. Sherlock Holmes was in active practice as a consulting detective for 23 years, from 1880 until 1903. For 17 of those years, I, John H. Watson, enjoyed the singular privilege of being his friend, his confidant, and in some small measure, his colleague. It is curious that during Sherlock Holmes' entire career, there was only one client whom he served on 2 separate occasions. I refer to His Holiness Pope Leo XIII. In 1888, there came the affair of the Vatican cameos, and in 1895, there occurred the incredible murder of Cardinal Tosca. Hitherto, my notes on both cases have lain in an old tin dispatch box, a relic of my Indian Army days, in the vaults of Cox and Company at Charing Cross, London. As a result of the startling events of the past week, I now propose to put those notes which relate to the Cardinal's death in order, and to prepare a fair copy for the perusal of succeeding generations. I say succeeding generations, because the fate not only of men but of nations should tremble in the balance if certain of these matters became public knowledge in these present perilous times. Sherlock Holmes never had a busier year than 1895. The smells and sounds of the motor car had not as yet begun to compete with the smells and sounds of the horse-drawn hansoms and four-wheelers in London streets. It was still possible for those who shared Sherlock Holmes' dislike of the telephone to conduct their affairs by telegram. A man might, if he wished, send out for a dinner consisting of pheasant, woodcock, and pâté de foie gras pie, and for a shilling or 2 extra, have delivered a bottle of excellent French wine to wash down his meal. Of course, as always, there was a darker side to life. It was scarcely safe to ride on the Underground Railway because of the bombs planted there by anarchists and Irish Republicans. There were parts of London where only a very bold or very foolish man should have ventured alone after dark. There was a revival of Satanism and witchcraft, half silly and half dangerous, under the leadership of men such as Aleister Crowley, whose followers believed him to be the great beast of the apocalypse. I see from my notes that my introduction to the case of Cardinal Tosca came 19 years ago, on a warm June morning when I returned to 221B Baker Street after spending a few days out of town. I take it from the music, the game is afoot again, Mrs. Hudson.
I don't know, Doctor. But he's not had so much as a wink of sleep or a bite of food for 3 days.
He must be on the track of very big game indeed.
At least it's better for him than when he's bored and taking those terrible injections.
Well, the less said about that, the better, Mrs. Hudson.
Of course, Doctor.
However, it will comfort you to know that a remarkable new medicine has been developed for the treatment of cocaine addiction.
Oh, what is it?
It's called heroin.
Oh, it'll be a blessing for many a poor soul. Will there be anything else, sir?
I'll ring if we need anything.
Try to get him to eat something.
Yes. Holmes? Holmes, you there? Of course he's there, Watson.
My dear fellow, of course I'm here.
I hope I didn't interrupt you.
You did indeed interrupt me, Doctor. However, that does not lessen my pleasure at having you home.
I must apologize for not letting you know I had to leave town for a few days. Actually, I had to catch the train...
To Portsmouth, where your old army orderly, Murray, the man who saved your life when you were wounded in Afghanistan, lay perilously ill. I'm delighted to perceive that his condition has improved.
Holmes, you never cease to astonish me. How could you possibly have known about poor Murray?
When I observe that an old soldier has reverted to carrying his handkerchief in his sleeve as he did in his army days, I may safely assume that something has reminded him of his military past.
Well.
Furthermore, you were limping slightly a moment ago, although it has been some time since your old wound actually pained you. The inference was fairly obvious.
But how did you deduce that Murray was ill and was on the road to recovery?
Tut, Doctor, you took your medical bag.
Oh, of course.
Moreover, the right shoulder of your coat bears an inordinate amount of lint, such as can be found only on the seats of a British railway carriage.
Good heavens.
Evidently, you slept very peacefully during your journey home, something you'd scarcely have done if you were still concerned for your old comrade.
Extraordinary.
Elementary. Ah, that will be my visitor.
Visitor, eh? It's not difficult for me to deduce that you've been occupied during my absence. May I ask what you're working on?
A number of things. Among them, I was successful in recovering a packet of somewhat compromising letters for Mr. Oscar Wilde.
Compromising? I'm not surprised.
In one of them, he describes a very plain Cockney stable boy as being like a hyacinth, all white and gold.
Abominable.
Extravagant.
Fellow ought to be in prison.
Don't you think that's rather a severe punishment for a bad simile?
Mr. Holmes, there's a strange gentleman to see you.
Strange?
Yeah. Half his face is covered with some kind of mask.
Ah, that will be Colonel Dashwood. I've been expecting him. Show him up, please, Mrs. Hudson.
Yes, sir. May I bring anything, sir? Some beef tea, perhaps?
Later, Mrs. Hudson.
Poached egg?
No.
Very well, then.
Out of my way, woman!
Oh, well.
Holmes! Holmes! I haven't got all day.
I'm delighted to see you again, Colonel. There are so few occasions nowadays when one can mix business with pleasure.
I find your sarcasm rather childish.
Oh, dear. I shall have to do better. I don't believe you've met my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson.
Well, how do you do, Colonel?
I do as I bloody well please.
Oh. Perhaps you'd prefer that I withdraw.
Not at all, my dear fellow.
I didn't come here to natter, Holmes. The price is £5,000. Take it or leave it.
You jest, of course.
The devil I do. Either I get my £5,000, or your chum Wilde will trade his velvet suit for a prison uniform.
Against my better judgment, I've been given authority to offer you £10 to compensate you for any expense you've incurred in recovering Mr. Wilde's manuscripts.
Wilde had better not play games with me. I won't stand for it.
Mr. Wilde, if you please.
He could be Lord Wilde for all I care. I warn you that I am not a man to be trifled with.
You had best take the £10, Colonel. You'll not get a farthing more.
Then you had better hand your client a loaded pistol and advise him to use it on himself, for he is a ruined man.
Tut, the moment the manuscripts are back in their author's possession, I shall urge him to publish them as a suite of prose poems. If he calls them hymns to Apollo, not even Queen Victoria will be shocked.
You've not seen the last of me, Holmes. Our paths will cross again.
The fellow's a dangerous lunatic.
Most entertaining chap, however.
Why did he wear that hideous mask?
He was once the handsomest officer in the Life Guards. His avocation was seduction, until a lady he ruined threw vitriol in his face.
Good Lord. No wonder the man's insane.
It did rather sour his disposition.
But, Holmes, I don't understand. You told me you had recovered Wilde's letters.
And so I have. I was amusing myself at the Colonel's expense.
But how did you recover them?
Burglary, with the unwitting assistance of the Colonel's head house parlour-maid, to whom I had become engaged.
Engaged? To be married?
Yes, I was disguised as a footman from a neighbouring house.
If you'll forgive my saying so, Holmes, I think that was downright caddish of you.
Not at all, Doctor. I assure you that by now my ex-fiancée has found solace in the arms of my hated rival, the postman. But come, pray fill your pipe from the Persian slipper, and let me tell you about a far more important case. Imagine, if you can, that you are an elderly priest of the Church of Rome. You go into your church one morning to say Mass, and there you find that the statuary has been smashed as though by a madman armed with a sledgehammer, the sanctuary has been violated, and the sacred host obscenely profaned. Then, more shocking still, you discover that one of your young curates, Father Chidiock Tichborne, is in the church...
Dead?
No, kneeling half-naked before two black candles, babbling like a madman, an inverted cross cut into his chest, a circlet of iron around his brow.
Why a circlet of iron?
For protection against the fiends from hell by any who read from the Red Book of Appin.
The Red Book of Appin?
The most terrible of all the ancient manuals of witchcraft.
Well, this is monstrous, Holmes.
What might have been your conclusion had you been that elderly priest?
Well, that the young fool of a curate had fallen in with those beastly Satanists and had got far more than he bargained for.
Quite so. Well done, Watson.
Well, then where's the mystery?
I meant that you were correct as to the conclusions reached by the elderly priest.
Oh, you have a different theory, then?
You should know by now, Doctor, that I never form a theory until all the facts are in my possession. Young Hopkins is conducting the investigation for Scotland Yard. Yesterday, at his invitation, I took the train down to Surrey to see the unfortunate Father Tichborne. His sister Violet has moved him to a cottage and is, without great success, attempting to restore his mental and physical well-being.
Well, that must be hard on her. Is she a nurse?
I think not, but she does seem to know what she's about.
Good.
She also refuses to believe that her brother could be guilty of such monstrous behavior.
Oh, that's not unnatural.
Perhaps. She is a most remarkable woman, this sister of Father Chidiock Tichborne.
In what way? Is she beautiful?
I believe that her bone structure and the texture and colour of her skin would please most men.
Holmes, there are times when I could swear that you were born on another planet.
Father Tichborne appears to be afflicted with a most distressing attack of brain fever. In the daytime he becomes almost lucid. Each night he resumes his ravings. His delirium is a singular thing. It's as though a finger were still tapping at the telegraph key, but all the wires were down. He cries out again and again, "The eagle has two heads. It is he who partakes of the blood."
Crowley and his witchcraft wallahs are always blathering about blood. Goat's blood, bat's blood, toad's blood.
God's blood, what has become of the brains my Maker gave me? Doctor, once again I am in your debt.
I have no doubt that the connection between toad's blood and brain fever is a perfectly self-evident one to a logical mind. However...
This is one of the candles from the church. As you see, it is black. And this white candle is from the unfortunate curate's sick room.
Well, surely you've already subjected both to chemical tests for poison.
Of course, and found nothing.
Well, then I fail to see.
I made the unforgivable mistake of overlooking the obvious. A child would have lit the candles. I did not. Doctor, I beg you to assist me in a small experiment.
I'm always happy to be of any service to you.
I must warn you that this could be dangerous.
We've hunted dangerous game together before.
So we have, Doctor. There. The candles are lit. We shall put one here and one here. Pray seat yourself directly in front of the white candle. And I shall sit in front of the black. We are about to engage in a little exercise in the ancient art of witch-finding. Let us sit perfectly still and breathe deeply while each observes the other closely. How do you feel, Watson?
I'm not sure. A bit giddy, perhaps. That could be only my imagination.
Do you perceive any change in me?
None. I know it's absurd of me, Holmes, but this experiment's beginning to frighten me.
Yes.
There's evil here. I can sense it. Unspeakable evil.
We must blow out our candles. I believe we've proved that my suspicions were correct. It would be folly to continue. Watson, can you hear me? Watson, your candle. To the window, man.
Out of my way! Canny horsemen went both into the valley! God in heaven, we mustn't let them take us alive! I've seen what they do to their prisoners! My saber! You black-hearted Gazi devil!
Watson, it's me, Holmes!
You're not massacring women and children now, you blackguard!
Watson!
Stop it, both of you.
Don't worry! Don't worry, madam! I'll protect you!
It's all right, Mrs. Hudson.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, what in heaven's name has been going on here?
You could say that the doctor and I called up the devil.
Oh, you haven't hurt him.
No. I merely quieted him temporarily with the aid of the ancient Japanese art of baritsu. He'll be all right in a moment. If you'd be so kind, a small glass of brandy.
Of course. I must have the strangest lodgers of any landlady in England. Colonels that wear masks, gentlemen calling up the devil. Here, drink this, Doctor. That's a good boy.
Thank you.
Feeling better, lad?
I'm fine now, Mrs. Hudson.
Then I'll go back to my kitchen. You wouldn't care for a bit of toasted cheese, then, Mr. Holmes?
No, thank you.
If you die of starvation, it'll be through no fault of mine.
Holmes, what's in that candle?
The effects indicate that it is a chemical derivative of a root whose Latin name is Sanguis Lucifero.
The blood of Lucifer.
The Lal Tor tribesmen of Sikyang, who use it in their manhood initiation ceremonies, know it as Nal Lo Ning Na, the wine of the black gods.
Now we know why Father Tichborne's delirium worsens at night.
Yeah, this drug was distilled from its natural state by someone singularly adept at chemistry. Touch the wick. Taste it. It's quite harmless unless combusted.
Sugar.
The villain broke bits from a sugar loaf and soaked them in the chemical liquid, then cast them in the candles in such a way that they'd ignite at predetermined intervals.
Why wasn't the sister affected?
The odds were against her being present at the moment when the poison was ignited. Moreover, she'd have had to sit very close to the flame and breathe very deeply of its fumes, a highly unlikely exercise to perform while officiating in a sick room.
But why would anyone go to such lengths to destroy an obscure clergyman?
There are times when the king does not consider it beneath his dignity to remove a pawn. Now, I'm afraid I must leave you.
Where are you off to?
To Surrey.
Without me?
Do you feel up to a railway journey?
I feel absolutely fit.
Then let us set off for Waterloo Station. We can save Father Tichborne. I suggest you bring along your old service revolver.
Inspector Hopkins and Miss Violet Tichborne.
Mr. Holmes, my brother is dead.
Miss Tichborne and I found his body not 40 minutes ago. We came straight here.
Then I have failed you, Miss Tichborne. If I had not been so damnably slow in finding the poison...
Poison? He hanged himself.
No, Stanley. Chidiac would never have taken his own life. Suicide is a mortal sin.
Not when it's committed in a fit of madness.
He was murdered.
Inspector, you say that he hanged himself. Where and how did he accomplish this?
Good Lord, Holmes, have a care for the lady's sensibilities.
Perhaps you'd prefer to step into the next room for a moment, Miss Tichborne?
I should much prefer to remain here, Mr. Holmes. I assure you that I'm not in the habit of fainting, but I should like to sit down.
I believe you'll find this chair quite comfortable.
Thank you.
Would you like a glass of water?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
I beg your pardon. Miss Tichborne, may I introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson?
How do you do, Mr. Tichborne?
Now, Hopkins, let us hear about it, and I implore you to be precise as to details.
Well, he must have managed to crawl out of bed, you see.
My dear young Hopkins, it's your observations that concern me, not your assumptions.
I'm sorry. He was found hanging outside the window. Oh. The room contained a rope for use in the event of fire. One end of it was fixed to a bolt in the floor. The other was tied around his neck.
He didn't have the strength to drag himself to the window, Stanley. I know how weak he was. I had to feed him.
Miss Tichborne, I have reason to believe that your brother had a pitiless and resourceful enemy.
People are not ordinarily murdered by their friends, Mr. Holmes.
On the contrary, my dear young lady, the vast majority of murders are committed by close friends or relatives.
Chidiac had neither friends nor enemies in England. He'd lived for years in Rome and Vienna, and I am his only surviving relative.
Then, despite your conviction that he was murdered, you know of no one who might have had a motive to kill him?
No one. Except myself.
Oh, don't talk nonsense, Violet.
He owned substantial estates in Devonshire. As his sister, I inherit everything. Isn't that motive enough?
You are not under suspicion, Miss Tichborne.
I should hope not.
An impatient heiress would never have gone to so much trouble.
Or used a method so certain to attract attention.
Precisely. She'd have merely put arsenic in his soup if she was simple, or arranged for him to have a fatal accident if she was clever.
But if it was murder, why in the name of all that's wonderful was he hanged?
Why does the farmer hang the crows in the corn?
To frighten other crows away.
Then you believe this was meant to be a warning. But to whom?
That we shall discover. How far did Father Tichborne fall, Inspector?
Exactly 6 feet 9 inches.
Good work. How much did he weigh?
11 stone.
Where is the rope?
I sent it to the yard.
I should be greatly obliged if you would go and fetch it.
Yes, sir.
You can perform me another small service by stopping at the Leadenhall Market, where you will find Mr. James Berry, a purveyor of bacon. Request that he come to Baker Street at once.
A bacon seller?
There's always method in Holmes' madness, Miss Tichborne.
And a bit of madness in my method, eh, Doctor?
I'll be back shortly.
Inspector, perhaps you could see me to a hotel?
Oh, of course, forgive me. I should have realized you'd not wish to return to Surrey. Will the Northumberland do?
That will be fine, thank you. Goodbye, Doctor.
Goodbye, my dear.
Miss Tichborne, it is never easy to find adequate words at such a time. It is more difficult still when one feels, as I do, that he might have prevented the tragedy. I'm a miserable bungler. Perhaps it is time that I closed down this agency and retired to keep bees on the Sussex Downs.
You mustn't blame yourself, Mr. Holmes. I ask only that you find my brother's murderer.
I promise you that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Damnably confusing young woman. Charming 1 minute, disconcerting the next.
The most charming woman I ever knew was hanged for poisoning her 3 small children for £30 in insurance money.
You're jesting, Holmes, and in rather bad taste.
Not at all. She collected the sulphur from matchsticks and added it to their milk.
How ghastly.
Yet patience and persistence are almost universally looked upon as estimable qualities. Think of the hours the lady must have spent painstakingly scraping thousands of matchsticks with an exceedingly sharp razor. We must admire such industry, however much we may deplore its purpose.
Holmes, if I did not know you so well, I should swear that you had no heart.
I concede that Miss Tichborne is a most interesting specimen of the sex.
She must have loved her brother very deeply.
Of that there can be no doubt. I studied her as we stood over his sickbed. Her love for Chidiac Tichborne was terrible in its intensity. Yet when he died horribly, she did not shed a tear.
How could you possibly have known that?
She indulges in the somewhat absurd practice of tinting her cheeks with rouge. The rouge was well set, indicating that it had been applied some time before the discovery of the tragedy. I noticed when she kissed me just now, it was not even faintly smeared.
As a doctor, I've seen wives receive the word that they were widows without a change in expression. They were quite dazed by the tragedy that had befallen them.
Miss Tichborne, on the other hand, is very much in command of herself.
Oh, yes, but then she's what the newspapers call the new woman of the 90s.
How did you ascertain that?
I merely glanced at the middle and index fingers of her right hand.
Dear me, and what did you see there?
A faint but distinctive stain. I believe you will agree, Holmes, that a young woman who is so unconventional as to smoke cigarettes is very likely to be unconventional in her behavior also.
Excellent, Doctor.
Rudimentary.
However, I find it more significant that the lady has recently dyed her hair and that her spectacles contain ordinary window glass.
You can't come in here.
It would seem that we have another visitor, and an unwelcome one.
What business here?
Not in my house, you haven't.
Charlie the Rat at your service, me good sirs. Rat is me name, and Rat is me racket. With this here rat pole, I'll have you fixed up in no time.
Rat catcher in my house, Mr. Holmes. Have you ever seen so much as a mouse in the 14 years that you've lived here?
You've got the wrong house, my man.
What is this, 221B Baker Street, ain't it?
It is.
Well, I've come to the right place.
This is too much, Mr. Holmes. Now, I've put up with a lot, Lord knows. I thought I'd seen everything the day you sat there in your dressing gown and fired your pistol at the wall until you spelled out the Queen's initials.
Blimey.
But if you've brought rats into my house, I swear I'll put you out.
Tut, tut, dear lady, I assure you there are no rats here.
No?
Apart from the dead ones in our friend's bag. I'll explain everything later.
Oh, rat catchers, men in masks, devil worship.
Now, what have we here? Extraordinary. I've never seen rats their equal except in Tim Donovan's doss house in Dorset Street.
The John L. Sullivan of rat catchers, I am.
Upon my word, this fine fellow reminds me of the late, lamented Professor Moriarty. Observe the eyes, Watson, and the mouth, particularly the incisors. There's a distinct family resemblance. Or could this be the Professor reincarnated?
Disgusting creatures.
It's very singular that there's no species for which mankind has greater detestation, and none whose habits and tastes are so similar to our own.
Yeah, he's yours for a bob, Gov.
In my experience, rat catchers are ordinarily paid for removing rats rather than for supplying them.
My dear Watson, we must remember that this is an unusual rat catcher indeed.
That's right, Gov.
Your Eminence, I am at your service.
It's a joy to see you again, Holmes.
Doctor, our humble rooms are being honoured by the presence of His Eminence Giovanni Cardinal Tosca, titular Archbishop of Cappadocia, Privy Secretary of State to His Holiness Pope Leo XIII, and Prefect of the Supreme Military Council of the Sacred Congregation for the Preservation of the Faith.
Good Lord.
Quite so, Doctor. How long did it take you to find me out, Holmes?
30 seconds, perhaps.
Then I did very well. Those I intended to deceive will be deceived.
I should have taken longer had we not been grave diggers together in 79.
Grave diggers? In Hamlet, at the old Duke of Kendal Theatre.
For 10 shillings a week.
Yes, and half of it taken back in fines by the actor-manager.
Your Eminence has been an actor, then, eh?
The Cardinal has been many things. Actor, soldier, missionary in the jungles of Brazil.
Where I may have learned more from the witch doctors than they learned from me.
I propose that we have a sip of brandy in honour of this occasion.
Perhaps His Eminence would care for something a little less...
No, brandy will be fine, thank you. I see you remember my weakness for brandy, Holmes.
I do indeed. Gentlemen.
Yeah.
If I may offer one small suggestion, Your Eminence, in future you would be wise to remember that a rat catcher's boots, the left one in particular, are certain to be marked with numerous rodent bites. Yours are disreputable enough, to be sure, but alas, unbitten.
That small suggestion could one day save my life.
How so?
Doctor, the sacred congregation of which His Eminence has the honour to be prefect is nothing less than the Pope's secret service.
I never dreamed that such an organization existed.
We have served the church since the time of Charlemagne, Doctor.
And at times they make the Russian secret police look like a pack of schoolboys playing at hares and hounds. Young Father Tichborne was, of course, your agent.
One of our best men.
Your church is still interested in witchcraft?
Oh, no, it's the least of our concerns.
Pray tell me, Your Eminence, what Father Tichborne's presence in England had to do with the Emperor of Austria.
What makes you think that the Emperor is involved in this?
Tichborne told me.
When?
When crying in his delirium, "The eagle has two heads. It is he who partakes of the blood."
Of course. The double-headed eagle is the emblem of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. But what's the significance of he who partakes of the blood?
According to the Roman Catholic ritual, the Emperor is the only layman who is permitted to partake of the sacramental wine. Is that not so, Your Eminence?
Yes, Holmes.
I begin to understand the involvement of the Pope's secret service.
The Emperor is the most powerful Catholic on earth.
Apart from the Pope.
He can be more powerful sometimes. He has the authority to veto the election of a Pope.
Good heavens.
Lucifer aspired to usurp the throne of God. Our adversary means to become ruler not only of a great empire, but of the Christian Church.
I find that incredible.
Consider the facts, Doctor. The Emperor's only son, the Crown Prince Rudolph, was shot to death at Meierling in 1888.
Oh, that was suicide.
Oh, no. The Crown Prince and his mistress, the Countess Maria Vetzera, were murdered in his hunting lodge. To avoid scandal, 2 officers of the imperial household dressed the Countess's corpse. They carried her to an open carriage, sat the corpse on the seat between them, and drove down the mountain to a railway station. There they carried her, as before, to a compartment in a train, and again sat with her, braced between them. It was thus they delivered her to her parents, who buried her at night. That was 7 years ago.
Appalling.
And more recently, the Emperor's wife, the Empress Elizabeth, was stabbed to death at Geneva, and in a singularly macabre way. A workman bumped against her as she walked towards her yacht. She walked on, smiling, completely unaware that she had been stabbed through the heart by a knife almost as thin as a wire. Minutes later, she died.
Robbed of her life and her death.
Yes. Now, the entire staff of the imperial household has been changed, from aide-de-camp to page boys. Our agents inform me that the Emperor has ceased to visit the woman who has been his mistress for the past 30 years. And finally, there's the last message Tichborne sent to me before he left Vienna for London. Wilhelm Bauer, outstanding as Richard III at the Theatre Royal. What does all this suggest to you?
I'm completely at a loss.
Holmes?
2 things. Firstly, Bauer could never be outstanding as Richard. And secondly, there is no Theatre Royal in Vienna. However, I believe that at this point we might enlighten ourselves considerably by examining the current year's file of the Illustrated London News. Here we are. January, February... March, April, and May. The March edition for you, Your Eminence. The
well.
April edition for you, Doctor. And the May edition for me.
May I ask what we're looking for?
Photographs of the Emperor Franz Joseph, my dear fellow.
Ah.
The Chicago World's Fair. The new Prime Minister of Canada, Sir Mackenzie Bowell. A dour-looking fellow. The Queen picnicking in the Highlands with her gilly, Mr. John Brown. Both of them looking just a trifle tiddly.
Oh dear.
Here we have it. The Austro-Hungarian Emperor reviewing his Croatian troops.
And here he is at a command performance in the Imperial Opera House.
Fascinating.
What do you see?
As you may know, I published 2 trifling monographs on the variability of the human ear, the most distinctive part of the body, and the only part that never changes from birth to death. According to these photographs, the imperial ears underwent an astonishing transformation between April and May.
My suspicions were correct. The Emperor has been replaced by an imposter.
The actor, Bauer.
Exactly. Holmes, this could be the most important case of your career. The future of the world is at stake.
Only one man possesses the genius to conceive and carry out such a monstrous plan. Moriarty.
Moriarty?
But he plunged to his death at the Reichenbach Falls 4 years ago.
Ah, Doctor, but so did I.
So everyone believed. But you saw Moriarty die.
I know, however, it must have been an impostor, a mere pawn.
How can you be sure?
When you have eliminated the impossible, what remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth.
Who is this Moriarty? I've never heard of him.
Moriarty is the Napoleon of crime. A spider crouched at the center of a web whose poisonous strands extend into 3 continents. The greatest conspirator who ever lived. The organizing brain behind half the devilment between here and Constantinople. I must confess that life has been singularly dull without the Professor. I'm rather looking forward to our reunion.
Reunion?
I propose to invite Professor Moriarty to call upon us at Baker Street tonight.
How do you intend to get in touch with him?
Nothing simpler. I shall merely dispatch a telegram to his brother, who is always to be found at his club in St. James Street.
Moriarty will never accept your invitation.
He'll be here tonight. I promise you that. And, of course, we shall also expect your eminence.
I shall look forward to meeting the gentleman.
I shall also invite Inspector Hopkins and Miss Tichborne. I propose to demonstrate to her how her brother was driven mad.
Miss Tichborne?
Yes, the priest's sister.
Tichborne's only sister is dead.
Dead?
Yes, quite dead.
Ah, time to resume your rat-catcher disguise.
Yes.
Here's a shilling for you. Be off with you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Any time I can be of assistance, just you call.
Inspector Hopkins and Mr. Berry.
Yeah, ma'am, here's me card in case you should ever require me services.
Out, you rat catchers. Target practice in the sitting room.
There's a criminal type if I ever saw one.
One of my many sources of information. Mr. Berry, it was kind of you to come.
I'm always more than happy to lend an hand to Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Why, you and me is labourers in the same vineyard, you might say.
What's he talking about, Holmes?
Until very recently, Mr. Berry had the honour to be the public hangman, Doctor.
Upon my word.
I liked the work well enough, but it kept me away from home too much. It was Monday in Devonshire, Tuesday in Yorkshire, Wednesday in Edinburgh, and Thursday in Cardiff. I missed the wife and the nippers. And then there was Ireland. Would you believe I had to disguise myself as a woman to get in and out of Dublin alive?
The Irish are a singular people. But come, let us get down to business. Hopkins, pray allow Mr. Berry to examine the rope.
Yes, sir.
Indian hemp.
But not the best quality.
Oh.
Although it would do in a pinch. Half an inch thick. Ought to be 1/4 of an inch thicker for best results. One of my ropes did me 16 jobs.
Good heavens.
Nowadays, government makes you burn 'em after a job. Waste of the taxpayers' money, if you ask me.
Does it not tell you anything?
It's a classic hangman's knot.
Are you suggesting that a professional executioner...
Professional doesn't have time for that sort of thing anymore. I always used a brass ring with a leather washer to keep it from slipping. Beats a knot 6 ways to Sunday.
Mr. Berry, let us assume that you were given this rope with this knot and asked to hang a man weighing 11 stone. Let us further assume that you were instructed to drop him precisely 6 feet 9 inches. What would be the result?
Well then, Mr. Holmes, it's not as simple as that. There are some questions I'd have to ask first. Had he recently tried to cut his throat?
No.
You'd be surprised how many of them do on the night before the execution. Did he ever have the king's evil, scrofula? It destroys the neck muscles.
No.
No. Well, then, let's put it this way. Do you mind, Inspector? I'll just slip the noose over your head. There. Now, the object of hanging is to dislocate the cervical vertebrae, here, between the atlas and the axis.
Oh.
Failing that, you ought to rupture the jugular vein.
Oh, I see. Oh.
Here, which works just as well, but is considerably messier.
Oh, good heavens.
To do the job right, the drop ought to provide a momentum of 2,600 pounds. Now, the simplest way to calculate your drop is to divide the number 539 by the convict's weight in stones. Now, you say this fellow weighed 11 stone. How much did his head weigh?
Hopkins?
I don't know, sir.
Well, 1 stone for the head is usually about right. You don't count the weight of the head, you see, because it's supported by the rope.
Good Lord.
Subtract 1 stone, divide 10 into 539, you get 5.39 feet. 5 feet 5 inches will do the job very nicely.
And what would happen if he were dropped 6 feet 9 inches?
Why, bless you, sir. That would rip his head clean off.
Here you are, Inspector. I'll remove that noose now.
Oh, thank you.
Just as I thought. Father Tichborne could not have thrown himself out of his bedroom window. He was lowered slowly on the end of the rope.
Oh, what a ghastly way to kill a man.
Yet it is the method preferred by the state, Inspector. Mr. Berry, I am greatly in your debt.
It was my pleasure, sir. Good day to you, gentlemen all.
Inspector, I trust that you will convey this information to Miss Tichborne.
Oh, yes, sir. As a matter of fact, we're having lunch together.
You're beginning to remind me of Dr. Watson. In his younger days, he regularly fell in love with our female clients.
Only with one, Holmes.
I know, Watson. Your dearest Mary. Inspector, I beg you to bring Miss Tichborne to Baker Street tonight at 8 o'clock. I propose to undertake a small experiment that should be of interest to you both.
Yes, sir. Miss Tichborne, tonight at 8 o'clock.
So, once again I enter the lists against the most diabolical criminal genius the world has ever known. Doctor.
Yes?
I'm hungry.
Oh.
What do you say to a brace of woodcock and a bottle of Clos de Vougeot?
Capital. I'll see to it at once.
And I shall compose my telegram to Moriarty. Journeys end in lovers' meetings. Good evening, Professor.
It was most kind of you to invite me, Master Sherlock.
Permit me to take your hat and your walking stick?
Thank you.
I perceive that you have made some small improvement in your air gun. Forgive me, your walking stick. It is 9 ounces lighter than the old model.
8 1/2.
Capital. No noise, no smoke, no gunpowder burns. You must find it extremely useful.
Extremely. A hair-trigger revolver such as yours is an awkward thing to carry in a coat pocket, Master Sherlock.
Awkward, but comforting. If it bothers you, I'll put it on the table.
It seems like only yesterday that I watched you galloping across the Yorkshire moors on your pony.
Do you know, I believe that I detested you then even more than I detest you now.
Oh, dear me. I came here tonight truly hoping that we could let bygones be bygones. I bear you no ill will. In fact, I'm proud of you as an old pupil. There is room in England for us both.
At last count, you had tried to murder me 6 times.
7, my dear fellow.
7?
Do you recall the time when you were nearly run down by a train outside Nottingham?
You succeeded in outwitting me on 2 occasions then.
2?
Nottingham and Reichenbach. The man you sent to the falls could have been your twin.
He was far stronger than I, but alas, not quite clever enough.
Would you care for a glass of brandy?
An excellent suggestion. By the by, how did you ascertain that I was still among the living?
In the same way that the hound picks up the scent of the fox.
You are incurably boyish, Master Sherlock. It is at once your weakness and your strength.
Oh, dear me.
Oh, permit me.
Thank you. Careless of me.
I rarely permit myself such indulgences, but this is a very special occasion. It is not every day that a man returns from the dead. If you were a lesser man, you would have switched our glasses while I picked up the stopper of the decanter on the assumption that I had poisoned your drink.
Tut, Professor.
But being Master Sherlock Holmes, you would have deduced that I poisoned my own drink on the assumption that you would exchange it for yours.
You insult my intelligence, Professor. Had you wished to poison me, you would have put the venom in my glass, thinking I should expect it to be in yours. capital.
And yet you drink from it.
Of course. At present, you have no reason to kill me.
And now that we've had our little joke on one another, let us get down to a discussion of important matters. You said in your telegram that... Is this some sort of trap? I have only to shout and this room will be filled with armed men.
Tut, Professor, your nerves are not what they once were. That is Dr. Watson bringing our guests.
Then I shall leave you at once. I wish you a very good night.
What, and miss an opportunity to meet His Eminence, Cardinal Tosca. May I present Professor James Moriarty?
Your Eminence, Professor?
And now, between his darkness and his brightness, there passed a glance of singular politeness.
Professor?
Your servant, Dr. Watson.
Inspector Hopkins of Scotland Yard.
How do you do? How do you do, sir?
Inspector.
And Miss Violet Tichborne.
How do you do?
Your servants.
The professor is about to depart. It is most unfortunate that he will not be present to observe the results of our small experiment with the blood of Lucifer.
I have changed my mind. I shall stay.
Excellent. And now, Hopkins, if you will be so kind as to assist me.
Oh, yes, of course, sir.
For God's sake, Holmes, take care. You know what happened to me with those candles?
Indeed. Miss Tichborne, if you will be seated, I now propose to demonstrate how your brother was driven mad.
Find my brother's murderer and point him out to me, Mr. Holmes. I shall do the rest.
It's a matter for the law, Violet.
And for God.
Neither God nor the law saved Chittick Tichborne.
Perhaps you'd use my knife on these candles, Doctor.
Oh, yes, of course.
Hopkins,
yes, sir.
Help me to move this table.
Oh, yes, sir.
Brussels is a very curious city, Miss Tichborne. At first glimpse, one would think it a city made from sweetmeats and gingerbread, and yet underneath it all there is corruption equal to any in Marseille.
Forgive me, I don't understand.
It is I who should apologize. I'm not accustomed to conversing with young ladies.
I have never been in Brussels.
Should you ever choose to go there, I have no doubt you will be presented at court.
I'll talk with you later.
I rather thought you might wish to.
Do we need anything else, Mr. Holmes?
I rather believe we are ready to proceed. I beg you to stay well back. As for me, I shall light the candles, sit down here, and breathe very deeply. Pray watch for any changes in my appearance or behavior.
The candles have been trimmed for maximum effect. We won't have long to wait. What do you say, Holmes? The drug is taking effect.
A drug? What drug?
Holmes will explain later.
The murderer is in this room.
What in this
Who
room?
is he?
This has gone far enough. I'm going to blow out that candle.
Stay where you are, all of you.
Holmes, for the love of God.
I warn you, this gun is loaded.
Mr. Holmes!
Stop. Stay back. Miss Tichborne, I have kept my promise and found your brother's murderer.
You haven't said which of us it is.
It's a delusion, Professor. Can't you see that? He doesn't know what he's saying.
It's no delusion. There he stands. The false priest, Tosca.
What? You!
My poor Holmes.
You have betrayed our friendship and you have betrayed your God.
You found your murderer, Mr. Holmes. I'll see that he's brought to justice. You don't need that gun now.
I am your prisoner, Inspector.
Come, Mr. Holmes. It's all right. You can give me your pistol now.
Don't move.
The gun, Mr. Holmes.
I warned you.
All right, Hopkins.
Yes.
Please, old friend.
No friend of yours.
Your Eminence!
It's better this way. At least I've saved him from the gallows.
Put your own neck in a noose, it would appear.
Your revolver, Mr. Holmes. Doctor, see to the Cardinal.
Yes, of course.
Is he badly hurt?
He's dead.
Do mind, Doctor. I'd like to see for myself. Dear me. It's quite true, Master Sherlock. He is dead.
There will now be a short intermission before we return to the incredible murder of Cardinal Tosca. And now on Festival Theatre we return to the incredible murder of Cardinal Tosca.
My heart turned to lead within me as Inspector Hopkins put the handcuffs on Sherlock Holmes' wrists. I had myself experienced the horrible effects of the drug. Under its influence, I had in fact attempted to kill Holmes with my saber. Now I had pronounced Cardinal Tosca dead. I stood benumbed as the inspector led Holmes away, and it was not until I stumbled to a window in hope that fresh air might reawaken my senses that I was reminded that other matters demanded my attention. The gas street lamps were misty splotches in the dense, drizzly fog that had by now descended. Hopkins and his prisoner Holmes had left in a hansom for the Bow Street cells. Then, dimly, through the damp fog, I saw a sight that brought a cry of warning to my lips. Professor Moriarty's carriage, and Moriarty assisting a passenger to enter it. His passenger was Miss Violet Tichborne. My every instinct impelled me to prevent her from falling into Moriarty's hands. Pausing only long enough to arm myself with my old service revolver, I ran downstairs, almost colliding with the police constables who had come to take away the Cardinal's body. More strange and hideous events were shortly to unfold, both in the foggy streets of the great city and in the mortuary situated beneath Sherlock Holmes' cell.
Where's that bloomin' light? Dark as a morgue in here. Well, 'tis a morgue. Place gives me the creeps. Well, it's the living we have to worry about, not the dead. Hey, mate, switch on the light, will ya? Thanks. And lend a hand here, eh? Oh, sorry, Inspector.
Step lively, Constable. Sir George Atkinson will be here any minute.
Head gaffer himself, eh? He's not going to like being called away from his state reception. I knew this would be a big one.
Oh, yes, a big one indeed.
There's something ruddy horrible about it, though. It seems so permanent, if you get my meaning, sir.
Oh, what are you talking about?
Being shot ain't so bad, though I'll warrant that arm of yours will hurt like blue blazes tomorrow.
Oh, you're probably right.
Hope you're luckier than a mate of mine. He got it in the arm same as you did. Gangrene set in. They sawed his arm off.
Oh, really?
Still, you can't compare losing your arm with losing your...
Hopkins?
Yes, Sir George?
Stop! Hopkins, do you know what you've interrupted?
Oh, yes, sir, but it's a shocking business.
I should say it is. One of the grand panjandrums of the Popish Church, shot to death by England's most famous detective. Is Holmes in a cell?
Yes, sir, upstairs.
How did it happen?
Well, Holmes undertook a scientific experiment as part of our investigation into the Tichborne case. To test the effect of a drug, he took it himself.
Damned silly thing to do.
Well, he must have miscalculated. It drove him mad. He picked up his revolver and killed the Cardinal.
I gather he also winged you.
Oh, it's only a flesh wound, sir.
Don't take any chances with it.
Yes, sir.
That's the same advice as I gave him, sir.
Is it indeed? Hopkins, I can't conceive of how you allowed yourself to be party to this wretched experiment. Sometimes I think that you Eton boys aren't a damned bit brighter than the old lot of detectives who started out on the pavement with a bullseye lantern in one hand and a truncheon in the other.
I've no excuse, sir.
Well, there's not a judge in England would hang Sherlock Holmes. But I shouldn't be at all surprised if he was sent to Broadmoor.
Oh, he'd rather hang than be locked up for life in an asylum for criminal lunatics.
I dare say he would. Is this the Cardinal's body?
Most of it, sir.
What do you mean, most of it? Good Lord, he's been beheaded.
This can't be the body from Baker Street.
It's the body from Baker Street, right enough.
Why in the name of heaven didn't you tell me about this?
I thought you knew, sir.
You went upstairs immediately after I left with the prisoner?
I was in Mr. Holmes' rooms 2 minutes after you gave me my orders.
The Cardinal's body oughtn't to have been left alone for 2 seconds. Hopkins, Don't you know what will happen when the damned papists find out about this? There'll be riots in Dublin.
I'm a damned papist myself, sir.
Oh. Sorry, old chap. Damn silly thing for me to say. But you know what those bloody Fenians are like. This will be more grist for their mill. Another chance for them to stab the Empire in the back. Whoever that is, Constable, get rid of them.
Yes, sir.
Hopkins.
Yes, sir.
We have a problem.
Oh, yes, sir.
If the news of this gets out,
You can't come in here.
I'm Dr. Watson.
I don't care if you're Dr. Livingston.
It's all right, Constable.
Right, sir.
Doctor?
Yes.
Something horrible has happened.
Jones?
No, he's perfectly all right now. Look here, the Cardinal's body.
Oh, Sir George.
Dr. Watson.
I begin to understand why our ancestors hanged witches.
Then you think Satanists did this?
I'll wager 100 guineas that this is the work of damned devil worshippers. And further horrors may lay in store. Miss Tichborne has disappeared.
Violet? When?
Within the hour.
Oh, but how?
Wait, Hopkins. Hello, what's this?
You found something?
Yes. Something very singular indeed. The head was not cut off.
You're not making sense, Doctor. Of course it was.
No, it was torn. Literally torn from the body as if by some superhuman force.
Oh.
Sir George, you must consult Sherlock Holmes.
He's right, sir.
What will the newspapers say if the head of the CID seeks advice from a prisoner in the Bow Street cells?
Oh, Holmes is no ordinary prisoner.
What will the Home Secretary say if the CID fails to track down those responsible for this atrocity?
It can't be done.
What will Lord Salisbury say when the word reaches Downing Street that the body of a prince of the church has been desecrated by Satanists?
Constable, fetch Holmes.
Yes, sir.
Doctor, you said that Miss Tichborne had disappeared.
Yes, vanished into thin air. I fear that Moriarty may have abducted her.
Moriarty? Holmes has always had a bee in his bonnet about that fellow. There's never been a shred of evidence to back it up.
Moriarty is the most dangerous man in England.
So Holmes would have us believe. Hopkins, did you ever know the man to so much as swipe an apple from a street seller's barrow?
Oh, no, sir.
I thought not.
He has repeatedly tried to murder Sherlock Holmes.
And you have witnessed these attempts.
No, but I put unquestioning trust in the word of the best and wisest man I have ever known.
That does more credit to your friendship than to your intelligence, Doctor.
I'm inclined to agree with the doctor, Sir George.
Well, more fool you.
My dear Holmes.
My good Watson.
Well, Holmes, we've met under happier circumstances.
Yes. How's the arm, young Hopkins?
It's only a scratch, sir.
Yes.
I trust they've been treating you well upstairs.
I've been amusing myself by arm wrestling with my cellmate, an old acquaintance named Mouser Warwick, who's been incarcerated as the result of a small domestic altercation in which he is alleged to have bitten off the end of his mistress's nose.
Oh. It's disgraceful that you should be forced to share a cell with such a blackguard.
Doctor, the Mouser is an entertaining fellow in his own way. It's true that he doesn't shine in conversation, but he's adept at arm wrestling and plays the best Jew's harp of any pickpocket in London.
You're a cool one, Mr. Holmes. In your position, I'd be tearing my hair.
I'm a creature of pure logic, Inspector. Emotions of any kind are alien to me.
What does your pure logic make of this?
Dear me.
Dr. Watson believes this was done by Satanists.
A very plausible explanation.
Oh, is there any other?
There are at least 6 possible reasons for removing the head of a corpse. 1, for use in some satanic ceremony, as Dr. Watson has suggested. 2, it contains something of value. I once knew a valet who cut off his master's head to obtain the gold fillings in his teeth. 3, and most commonly, it could be the first act in the complete dismemberment of the body for convenient disposal. Committing murder is child's play compared with getting rid of the corpse. 4th, it could be a means of preventing the victim from being identified. 5th, it could be the work of a cannibal.
Oh, not in England, surely.
There was such a case in Yorkshire in 1878. The murderer added onions, carrots, and potatoes to the stew.
Oh, sir.
And, if memory serves, a dash of Worcester sauce. 6th, it could be a joke.
Preposterous.
Not at all. Contrary to popular belief, the average murderer has a very acute sense of humour. I've seldom met one who did not chuckle as he described his crime. You may remember what Mr. Bernard Shaw said of the late, lamented Jack the Ripper. He had an excellent sense of fun. The trouble was he didn't know when to stop.
I don't see how any of this pertains to the present case, except perhaps the Satanism.
We've got another riddle to unravel as well, Mr. Holmes.
And what is that, pray?
Miss Tichborne has disappeared.
Indeed.
She left Baker Street with Moriarty in his carriage.
You call that a disappearance?
Pray let me continue. I hailed a hansom and followed.
Followed? For what reason?
If you knew the truth about Moriarty, you wouldn't have to ask that question. The carriage stopped at last in Spitalfields.
Even we coppers don't like to go there alone at night.
Beside a graveyard.
Itchy Park, we call it.
I leapt from my cab, drew my revolver, ran to Moriarty's carriage and flung open the door. It was empty, and the coachman was dead upon his box.
An empty carriage with a dead coachman parked in front of a graveyard. All the picture lacks is Moriarty's signature.
But how could a dead coachman have driven a carriage across London?
Doubtless Moriarty had so arranged matters that the coachman would live as long as he kept driving and die the moment that he stopped.
Yes, but how?
I could give you a round dozen possible ways in which it could have been managed with curare.
Curare?
The poison which South American Indians affix to their darts.
What reason could Moriarty have for murdering his coachman?
My dear Sir George, Moriarty thinks no more of murder than you'd think of swatting a fly. The coachman may have talked too much, or he may have merely known too much. It's quite possible that he simply wasn't a very good coachman.
But, Doctor, what happened to Violet?
I don't know. The carriage was never out of my sight.
You see, Doctor, but you do not observe. Was there a four-wheeler in Baker Street when you took up your pursuit?
Well, there are always four-wheelers in Baker Street.
I suggest to you that at the moment when Moriarty's coachman whipped up his horses, one of those four-wheelers stood precisely parallel with his carriage.
By Jove, you're right.
Moriarty and Miss Tichborne merely stepped in one door of the carriage and out the other, on the opposite side. They then boarded the four-wheeler, which Moriarty must have engaged for just such a purpose.
Precisely.
He must have drugged her. Otherwise, she'd have resisted and called for help.
Pshaw! She probably went quite willingly.
Nonsense. If you'll forgive my saying so, Sir George.
Why is it nonsense, Doctor? Did he force her into the carriage in the first place?
No, she went with him willingly, but she had no way of knowing the man to be a villain.
Nor have I any evidence that he is a villain.
Why should an innocent man go to such lengths to elude pursuit?
Professor Moriarty and Miss Tichborne may merely have found the good doctor's attentions tiresome.
But the dead coachman!
Can you swear, as a physician, that he did not die of natural causes, save an apoplexy?
No.
No.
You searched the carriage, of course?
Yes, of course. It contained nothing, except for this.
Ah, a religious medal. But unlike any other I've ever seen.
A trinket dropped by Miss Tichborne tells us nothing.
Oh, have a look, Holmes.
Good Lord. I scarcely think that the lady would wear the insignia of the Grand Master of the Order of the Holy Sepulchre, an office traditionally held by the Austro-Hungarian Emperor. Sir George, you must release me immediately.
Have you forgotten that you've been charged with murder?
If I'm not set free at once, Europe may undergo its greatest catastrophe since the 30 Years' War.
I can scarcely release a man charged with murder on the strength of his knowledge of Austro-Hungarian heraldry and European history.
If you'd only explain yourself, Mr. Holmes, I'm sure that Sir George would listen to reason.
There isn't time for that. It may already be too late for me to prevent the greatest crime of the 19th century.
Holmes, I'll be frank. We've never been friends. I don't like your methods. You've committed burglaries. You've allowed murderers to walk away scot-free.
You've no proof of that.
No. But you know as well as I do that I've spoken the truth. Holmes has always considered himself to be above the law.
I often think that I may have caused more human anguish by enforcing the law than those I've apprehended caused by breaking it. But what has this to do with your refusal to release me?
Everything. I believe in the law. It's all very well for you to talk mysteriously about European catastrophes, but the fact remains that whatever may have happened to the coachman and Miss Tichborne and whoever it was that desecrated the Cardinal's body, it was you who killed Cardinal Tosca. You were there, Hopkins. You saw it. Can you deny that?
Well, I'm afraid not.
Until now, I hadn't realized how confoundedly inconvenient it is to be incarcerated.
Constable?
Yes, sir.
Return the prisoner to his cell.
Come along, sir.
I see no point in continuing this conversation any further, Hopkins.
Yes, sir. Charlie the Rat I am. Rat is me name and Rat is me racket.
Good heavens, Holmes, that's... Shh! Hopkins, remove that man. You'll have to wait outside.
Oh, I've got work to do here.
No, outside.
Well, what will the coroner say if there's rat bites on his corpses?
Out! Don't stand there nattering, Inspector. Get rid of the dog.
Yes, sir. I know my duty. Rat catcher in ordinary to Her Majesty's, God bless her, cells in Bow Street. That's who I am.
Good God.
And that takes in this here mortuary. I've got the papers to prove it. They give me and my pole as much right to be here as you have.
Constable, help the Inspector.
Yes, sir.
There's one!
Well?
Be careful with that damn pole.
There! Oh, Mr. Blighter.
Blimey, they're quick on their feet.
Did you ever see the like of it?
Never in my life.
This is intolerable, Hopkins.
Right! See the size of that one?
Watch the light.
Constable,
hold the prisoner!
Yes, sir, if I can find him. Ah, there.
It's me, you bloody imbecile! Hopkins, get a light!
Right, sir. Right, sir.
Run, Holmes! Don't be a fool, Doctor. Holmes, you haven't got a chance.
Quickly, Holmes, in here.
Where's that damn light? Don't let him get away!
Here, sir.
Oh, that's better, sir.
It's about time. Well, don't just stand there, man. Check the upper levels.
Yes, sir.
Constable.
Sir.
Do those old gas jets work?
Yes, sir, I suppose so, sir.
Then light them.
Yes, sir.
And you. I ought to charge you with assisting the escape of a criminal.
Oh, this place will be overrun with rats in no time if it weren't for old Charlie.
Doctor, you'd have served your friend much better by preventing his escape.
Perhaps.
Constable.
Sir.
Come with me.
Right, sir.
We'll search the tunnels.
Yes, sir.
You can't have got far.
No, sir.
You go ahead of me with the light.
Right, sir.
Oh, Your Eminence! There wasn't a sign of life in your body when I examined it in Baker Street.
Among other things, the sachems in the Brazilian jungles taught me the art of temporarily stopping the heart.
But how did you arrange this thing?
Why, you was out for your grub, the rat catcher popped back to Baker Street.
I see. And what was the purpose of this monstrous charade?
We wish to give Moriarty a false sense of security. As far as he knows, one hound is dead and the other caught in a trap.
Do you mean that Holmes is in one of those drawers?
Quite so, old chap. And confoundedly uncomfortable they are, although I suspect that nobody else has ever made that complaint.
Holmes, this is almost unforgivable. You don't trust me with your confidences, even after all the years we've been together. I was led to believe that your madness was real, tricked into thinking that the Cardinal had died at your hands. And I suppose that all the time you were laughing at me for being such a fool.
My dear old boy, I should never laugh at you. But among your innumerable talents, guile finds no place. You are the most thoroughly honest man I've ever known. If I told you, Moriarty would have seen through you like a pane of glass.
Oh.
Now, it's time for me to vacate the premises.
I think you'll find everything you need in my bag.
Thank you, Your Eminence.
Oh, another disguise, eh, Holmes?
Yes. Hold this wig for a moment, would you?
Oh, yes, certainly. Tell me, what was the purpose of the headless body?
The professor's spies are everywhere, even at Scotland Yard.
Where'd the poor fellow come from?
From a mud bank under Blackfriars Bridge. He had tied one end of a rope to a rail and the other around his neck, and then jumped. God rest his soul.
I ought to have conjectured as much.
Well, the skirt fits.
Yes. I should roll up the trouser legs, Holmes.
Yes. You've done very well, though, Doctor.
Oh.
You've established that the Emperor Franz Joseph is in England. Look at this medal, Your Eminence.
Yes. And this ribbon goes with it. It was found by one of our agents at Dover, dropped by a masked prisoner. The brave old man has left a trail for us.
A masked prisoner, you say? Surely in these times another disguise would have aroused less suspicion.
Not at all. It is common on the continent and not unusual in England for the police to force a criminal whom they are escorting to don a mask. The shawl, please. Thank you. Did you find Moriarty's lair, Your Eminence?
Yes, and it was where you expected it to be. I also learned that the assassin and torturer, Fu Teng, is expected in London today.
Fu Teng? Our paths have crossed before. A very dangerous gentleman. With his arrival, the games will begin in earnest. An initiation, perhaps, and most certainly a sacrifice.
Whose initiation, pray? And what sacrifice?
The initiation of Miss Violet Tichborne into Moriarty's coven of Satanists.
Yes, indeed.
Good Lord.
And the sacrifice of the Emperor. What could be more pleasing to Satan?
How can I help prevent these horrors?
First, a little ash from your pipe for my face. There. I take it that you're not averse to disturbing the peace, committing a public mischief, trespassing, and confounding a felony?
Not in a just cause.
Then you will greatly oblige me by purchasing as many fireworks as can be carried conveniently on the underground by the Baker Street irregulars.
Who, pray, are the Baker Street irregulars?
Street urchins who know London better than any copper and can go anywhere without being noticed. They are my eyes and ears. Tonight's commission should be to their taste. Provide them, Watson, with giant firecrackers, skyrockets, Roman candles, anything in that line. The noisier the better.
Right.
You will set them off at precisely midnight tonight. Midnight, mark you, in the underground railway system.
Where in the system?
Holderness Street Station.
Quickly, they're coming.
Look, Holmes, you're awake.
Thank you.
What? You're still here? Get out of my way, you
No,
private...
no, look here, Gov. It's all right.
And who the deuce is this woman?
How dare you talk to my husband like that?
Husband? This is too much.
Oh, no, love. The gentleman's just having his little joke.
Didn't sound funny to me.
Get them out of here, Hopkins, for God's sake.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Come on.
No.
Get your hands off me.
Oh, please, madam.
My husband is as good a man as any knob in London. We've got 10 little nippers to prove it.
Oh, well, I do my best, love.
That you do, Ducky.
It's like that song says. The one Lily sings. It's the rich what gets the gravy. It's the poor what gets the blame. It's the same the whole world over. Ain't it all a blooming shame?
I take it that you're happy that Holmes got away, Doctor.
Very happy.
I shouldn't be if I were you. He'll be damned lucky to come out of this alive.
But there is no Holiness Street Station. It was blown up by the Fenians.
What's that you say?
Now, what did Holmes say? When you have eliminated the impossible, what remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. Having applied Holmes' methods, it seemed crystal clear to me why he wished me and his barefoot street urchins to provide a distraction at a place that did not exist. Not only had the Holderness Street underground station been blown up, but a section of the tunnel leading to it had been subsequently sealed off. Little did the clerks and typewriterists riding to and from work on what was soon to be known as the Tube dream that within a few hundred yards of them there existed a subterranean Whitehall, the seat of government for a criminal empire. There, amid luxuries that would have been the envy of a Maharaja, surrounded by priceless works of art, served by slaves like a Sultan of Turkey, equipped with the most modern instruments of communication, ruled the former professor of mathematics, Moriarty. Moriarty, of whom it might have been said that by grace of the devil he was king of the underworld. There his staff officers gave out his orders and rewarded or punished his underlings. The punishments were more frequent than the rewards, and they were swift and stern.
Dashwood here. Has Fu Teng arrived? Let me know the instant that he does. Very well. Carl?
Mine here.
Mother Midnight and Burlstone are in the anteroom.
Ah, so.
Do they know why the professor sent for them? Good. Are they sweating? He's got the wind up. She's playing it artful.
So?
Send her in first. This ought to be entertaining, Carl.
Good evening, Colonel.
Good evening, Mother Midnight. Carl, where are your manners? Pray, assist the lady.
Ja, meine.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable?
I'd be more comfortable if I knew why you sent for me, Colonel.
Good. I admire directness in a woman. I will be equally frank. The Professor believes you to be dissatisfied with your present business arrangements with him.
He has been misinformed.
Then why have you been providing him with false inventories?
My books may not be quite up to date. I deal in a commodity with a high rate of depreciation. Stock has to be replenished continuously. Tastes change. My clients are becoming increasingly sophisticated in their requirements.
Let me read you what you have listed here. Number 44, Lowland Scottish Presbyterian background, age 36, no special skills. Do you deny that number 44 is, in fact, two blonde, 18-year-old Circassian twins with very extraordinary skills indeed?
An accounting error.
One of many, it would seem. You value the services of this fictitious Scots wench at £150 a month. I venture to guess that those two little Circassian morsels are worth 20 times as much.
No. I must allow for higher operating costs and faster depreciation. And they're not to everyone's taste. Only a few gentlemen wish an entire meal of caviar.
You've been cheating us, Mother.
No!
Yes. And if you continue to deny it, I shall lose my patience. And when I lose my patience, Carl finds that his hands start to itch. And when Carl's hands start to
I
itch...
swear to God, this has been the first time.
Make sure that it is the last. Carl, bring in Burlstone.
Ja, mein Herr.
Then I can go.
You will oblige me by staying a few minutes longer.
In here, Schwein. Good day to you, Colonel.
I suspect you've already made the acquaintance of Mr. Burlstone, also known as the King of the Beggars. It's very unwise to go anywhere in London without first obtaining Mr. Burlstone's permission.
Unwise and unhealthy, eh?
Quite so. Mr. Burlstone commands as scurvy a mob of bully bucks as ever wagged hemp in the wind. It is scarcely necessary to say that the Professor is his silent partner. Until recently, the relationship had been, for the most part, both profitable and congenial. Professor Moriarty regrets that you have elected to terminate it, Burlstone.
What, break up our partnership, you mean? I wouldn't dream of it, Colonel, no.
More than 200 men are employed here in these underground headquarters, every one of them a thief, a murderer, or both. Yet, this is the only place in this great city where a man may lay down his purse anywhere, mark you, and be certain that it will be there when he returns for it. We do not steal from each other, Mr. Burlstone, and above all, we do not swindle Moriarty.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You cheated the Professor once before.
No, that was a long time ago, and I paid him back to the last farthing.
You have cheated him for the second time.
No.
Yes. And you shall pay to the last farthing once again.
Yeah.
This time, however, it will be necessary for you to pay interest on your debt.
Well, you just say how much.
All.
What, every penny I got?
Everything you've got.
Oh.
Carl?
Ja, mein Herr. Oh, no. Oh, have mercy. Please. Look, you can have these.
A moment, Carl.
Look.
Such beautiful pearls.
Beautiful pearls, look.
Now, Carl. I trust you found that instructive, Mother Midnight?
Yes.
You may go.
Thank you.
Carl?
Ja, mein Herr.
Take that thing away.
Ja.
Oh, excuse me. I was looking for Professor Moriarty.
Ah, my dear Miss Tichborne. I am Colonel Dashwood, the Professor's associate. I trust your quarters are comfortable.
More than comfortable. Luxurious.
The Professor thought it appropriate to put you in the same room as the Mona Lisa.
How gallant of him. It's a remarkable reproduction.
It is not a reproduction. Would you care for a cigarette?
Thank you. Which gives Moriarty greater pleasure? Contemplating Leonardo's masterpiece, or reflecting that he's made fools of the art experts in the Louvre?
I doubt that either affords him as much enjoyment as the knowledge that something irreplaceable is his to preserve or destroy as he pleases.
When may I talk with him? I must get back to my hotel. Inspector Hopkins will be looking for me. I took a great risk in coming here.
Why did you come?
I believe that Moriarty knows who killed Chidiock Tichborne.
Holmes accused Tosca.
No, Holmes was insane when he made that accusation.
Well, what makes you think the Professor can help you?
There's not a murder in England that escapes Moriarty's attention.
What if he should be the very man you're looking for?
No. The man who killed Chidiock was a fool. Moriarty would no more have hanged him from a window than he tried to sell the Mona Lisa to the British Museum.
Do you take me for a fool?
I know nothing about you.
No woman shall ever make a fool out of me, I assure you of that.
Please, Colonel, you're hurting me.
You even succeeded in making a fool out of Sherlock Holmes with your masquerade as the priest's sister.
A demure little maiden with her rosary and her bowl of soup. The angel of the sick room. They had another name for you in Brussels. What was it?
La Violette Anglaise.
The young officers called you that. To the ladies at court, you were the English whore. Under the protection, a charming phrase, that, of no less a personage than the Count of Flanders. I'd have thought that easier work than your present vocation of impersonating the heiress to Tichborne Castle.
The Count died. Without his friendship, I was no longer welcome at court.
There are several things I'm curious about. Did you murder Tichborne's real sister?
Confronting, Monsieur, mein Herr.
Good. Bring him in.
Ja, mein Herr.
You'll wish to talk with your guest in private. Now, if you'll tell me where to find Moriarty...
He'll find you. Besides, you must meet Fu Teng. He is a great artist. Fu Teng is to murder what Bach was to music, and to torture what Goethe was to literature. I should be a bad host if I didn't introduce you.
Very well, if you insist. Chidiock's sister wasn't murdered. She drowned in a yachting accident.
So you didn't kill her. Pity. Fu Teng, at last we meet. This is a very great honor indeed.
The honor is mine, Colonel. Beneath the streets of London, you have rebuilt the palace of Kubla Khan.
The Professor likes to be comfortable. May I introduce another of our guests, Miss Tichborne?
Madame?
How do you do? The Colonel tells me that you're an artist. I must confess my ignorance of your work.
Mine is a small gift, although a useful one.
I fear that tonight's activities may be a bit coarse for your tastes.
Tonight's activities?
The Professor numbers among his menials a coven of Satanists, fools but useful to him. He wishes you to entertain them.
In what manner?
By officiating at a sacrifice. I shall be there spouting a pack of ballyhooly bog Latin.
Bog Latin?
Vidibam satanam sicut fulgur decolu cadentem.
I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven.
Clever lady. Does our talk of a sacrifice arouse your curiosity?
Your talk of Satanism does?
I rather thought that it would.
Satanists murdered Chidiock.
You continue to arouse my curiosity, dear lady. I keep asking myself, why should you care a fig who killed the priest? What was he to you, after all? Not your brother? Not your lover?
No.
Then why this thirst for revenge?
A personal matter? Oh, you're breaking my arm!
I will break every bone in your body if you don't tell me the truth. Now, you fooled Holmes, and I think you fooled Moriarty as well.
You're mad.
You made Holmes believe you were the sweet little sister. You made Moriarty believe you were an adventuress impersonating an heiress. I want to know who you really are.
Surely no one deceives Professor Moriarty, least of all a mere woman.
This is no ordinary woman. I strongly suspect her to be an agent of the Pope's Secret Service.
No, I'm certain you're mad.
If she truly is one of the Pope's agents, you are wasting your time. She will tell you nothing.
You were Tichborne's partner. Now, how much did he know? And how much of it did he pass on to Holmes?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Fu Teng, I've been told that in your hands, even those born mute will acquire the ability to speak.
I am unworthy such praise.
Use the knives on her.
Oh, my God.
The 1,000 knives?
Yes.
That is reserved for those who have committed the most grievous offenses against the Manchu Emperor himself. You are not suggesting that I demean myself by inflicting it upon this woman?
Good heavens, Colonel. Would you have asked Bach to play a tune on the penny whistle?
Must I remind you, Fu Teng, of the terms of the alliance between your master and mine?
I stand rebuked. You are my host. It would be ungracious of me to refuse your request.
Carl, hold her.
No. How can I tell you what you want to know if you kill me?
Death only comes with the 1,000th cut. You'll talk long before that.
In my country, we often call this simply the death. It combines science and art. The cuts must always be made in the same sequence. Each has a name. Number 1 is called the butterfly. Number 2, the grasshopper. There, you see?
They look to me like mere scratches.
Number 3, the locust.
Damn you!
Oh, yes. Yes, I begin to see the pattern.
The cuts are divided into 4 classes of 250 each. Each of the 4 classes is named for an element of the universe: air, fire, water, or earth. Those which you have seen are cuts of the air, affecting chiefly the skin and to a lesser degree the nerve ends. Next come the cuts of the fire. Number 5, the serpent. These involve the muscles and a little later the smaller bones. Number 6.
Wait!
I take it that you wish to tell me something.
Yes, everything.
Splendid. But first, let us see cut number 6.
No, make him stop, please.
Number 6, the hornet.
My congratulations, Fu Teng. Poor little lady. Release her, Carl.
Yeah, mine here.
I regret that it was necessary to punish you so severely. Still, you've been a deceitful wench, haven't you? Well, shall we talk about the Pope's Secret Service?
I know nothing about that. You must believe me.
Fu Teng.
No, listen. I was born on the Tichborne estate.
The daughter of General Sir Plunket Tichborne, the hero of Balaclava.
The daughter of a servant and of a father unknown. I grew up with Chidiac and his sister, studying their ways, imitating them. Presuming above my station, my mother called it. And then, when I was 15, Chidiac and I fell in love.
And, of course, the old general learned of this relationship.
There was no relationship. We were as innocent as children. But you're right. The general found out. He paid me 10 guineas to leave the country. 10 guineas. And I thought it was a fortune. Not long afterwards, Chidiac entered a seminary in Rome.
While you adopted a very different profession.
What choice did I have? A servant without references.
And you went from the streets to the palace of the Count of Flanders.
Yes. I made myself unworthy of Chidiac's love as he had made himself superior to mine. But when I learned that he was sick, alone, and in disgrace, I had to go to him.
You should have your stories set to music. It would fill the halfpenny seats in the music halls with sobbing kitchen maids.
It's the truth.
Fu Teng, finish it. Carl? No. The knives would take too long. Use your bowstring.
Ah, yes.
Oh, wait. I can spy on Inspector Hopkins for you. He's in love with me. And Holmes, he treats him like a son.
Enough! Dear me, Colonel, what have you been up to? Release her. You may go, Carl.
Yeah, Professor.
My dear Miss Violet, like many old soldiers, the Colonel has an unfortunate propensity for indulging in rather tasteless practical jokes.
So I've observed.
Dare I assume that I have the privilege of addressing the great Fu Teng?
Your servant, Lord.
Colonel, I thought I had made it quite clear that I wished to be informed immediately of our distinguished guest's arrival.
I got a bit carried away. It won't happen again.
Dear me, I should hope not.
I bring you greetings from the Tenku Kangte, Lord of the Five Tongues.
May he live for 1,000 years.
The Tenku Kangte begs that you accept this trifling gift.
Oh, such a beautiful box. Thank you.
You may recall that the Tenku's brother opposed our alliance.
He said he'd rather have his eyes torn out of his head than sign a treaty with the foreign devils.
You will perceive that his preference was respected.
Oh. Such generosity leaves me speechless.
Yeah, Professor. They've caught a spy.
Oh, please excuse me for a moment, Fu Teng. A spy? Where?
In the ruins of the old station.
They killed him, of course?
No, Colonel. They knocked him out.
Excellent. Bring him here at once.
Yeah, Professor.
My dear Colonel, when will you learn that the object of the game is not to sweep your opponent's pawns and pieces off the board, but to checkmate him? So, Dr. Watson. Was he alone, Carl?
Yeah.
Are you certain?
There was nobody else. Only a few children.
Master Sherlock's absurd band of 10-year-old ragamuffins. They need not concern us. Double the guard at all the entrances.
Yeah, Professor.
Moriarty. I failed, Holmes. Miss Violet, what have these scoundrels done to you?
I'm all right, Dr. Watson.
Watson, the faithful old collie striving to transform himself into a bloodhound, asking himself at every step of the way, what would Holmes do if he were here? And always coming up with the wrong answer, yet struggling on, refusing to admit defeat.
Better defeat in a good cause than victory in a bad one.
You speak as a citizen of a country that has not suffered a real defeat in 1,000 years. Such words do not come so easily to the lips of my countrymen.
Well spoken, Fu Teng. It is time that you and I talked of the great tasks that await us.
Ah, yes.
Do you think this is wise, Professor?
Are you questioning my methods, Colonel?
No. But what about Watson and the girl?
I feel that Dr. Watson and Miss Tichborne have earned the right to a glimpse into a future in which, unfortunately, they shall not participate.
I didn't know you were an astrologer, Professor.
I don't read the stars, dear lady. I rearrange them. Fu Teng, what is your chief impression of Europe in this year of 1895?
Unlike China, you have many guns.
Yes, in Europe there are many guns and much hatred. The Austro-Hungarian Empire is detested by its nominal ally, Italy, and both loathed and feared by its neighbor, Russia. France thirsts for revenge against Germany. Germany despises France and is bitterly envious of England. And in the Balkans, every twopenny-halfpenny principality seethes with hatred against every other twopenny-halfpenny principality, and they all hate the Turks. As for guns, Germany alone can raise an army of 9 million men, and they have guns that will fire an 1,800-pound shell 9 miles.
It is an enormous boil, ripe for the lancet.
It's bad for the blood, like going too long without a woman. We've been at peace for too long.
You would be astonished how many Europeans share the Colonel's sentiments.
And you?
I am an impresario who was about to stage the greatest entertainment of his career.
We're going to see to it that the wogs go for each other's throats.
Oh, must you be so crude, Colonel?
He's merely a rabid dog. It's you who make my blood run cold.
Yet my desires are no different from other men's, only more difficult to satisfy. I was born with an insatiable craving. At first I thought that what I wanted was great wealth, but I acquired great wealth and the craving remained. Then I thought that it was power that I craved. But when I achieved power, the craving did not lessen, but rather increased. Now I know that what I craved from the beginning was what every human being craves, to be entertained grandly, to escape, at least momentarily, from the insufferable boredom that has been inflicted upon us by the deity. Garden of Eden! Have you never thought that it may have been boredom that caused the fallen angels to join Lucifer's revolt in heaven? But forgive me, I digress. Whatever you may think of me, the fact remains that soon men will be on the march from Galicia to Flanders, because I, the greatest impresario in the history of mankind, have willed it to be so.
It would be madness for the nations of Europe to go to war. They're not populated by lunatics.
On the day that England declares war, there will be dancing in Trafalgar Square.
Never!
They'll dance because I, with a little assistance from their government, have rescued them, at least temporarily, from boredom. They'll march after death with songs on their lips.
You won't get away with it. Not even with the aid of your bogus emperor.
So you know about the emperor?
It no longer matters, Colonel.
But this means that Holmes must know as well.
Master Sherlock is in no position to interfere.
But not as long as he's locked in a cell in Bow Street. But what if he was
Pray do not concern yourself with such matters, Colonel. The muscular contortions which accompany your attempts to think are distressing to watch. You are quite right, Doctor. Even an emperor cannot declare war at a whim. Nor will men admit, even to themselves, that they are going to war out of boredom. It is necessary that there be a martyr. I have chosen one. The Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir presumptive to the throne of Austria-Hungary. It must appear that he was assassinated by a Serbian.
I still don't see how that
Of
would
course.
stop me.
That would do the trick. Within 24 hours, there'd be blood in the Danube. Austria would attack Serbia. Russia would come to Serbia's aid. Germany would issue an ultimatum to Russia. Within a week, the world would be on fire from cellar to garret.
Precisely. A world war. And with the assistance of my emperor, I shall elect a new pope. The Christians will serve me then as the Satanists serve me now. Who knows? Perhaps I shall undertake the job myself. Yes. The more I think about it, the more the idea appeals to me. I shall call myself Pope Alexander VII in deference to Pope Alexander VI, Borgian, whose tastes were very similar to mine. I rather relish the thought of being addressed as Your Holiness. Dear me, yes. Answer it, Colonel.
Yes? The fool. He knows better than to come here. Is that so? Send him in. Another guest is about to join us. A gentleman of some distinction, with information that may surprise you.
What information? Who is it?
Sir George!
Moriarty, Holmes has escaped.
Has he indeed?
He got away early this morning. I came here as soon as I dared. I've ordered the entire CID to drop everything else and search for him.
So you're another of this villain's henchmen, Sir George?
Oh, not a henchman, Doctor. An associate. This is another of my associates, Sir George Atkinson, Futeng.
Your servant, Sir George.
How do you do? You don't seem to be worried about Holmes, Professor. Never underestimate the man.
We need not trouble ourselves about Master Sherlock.
How can you be sure of that?
I have merely to press the trigger of this revolver to have him join his ancestors.
Futeng is Holmes?
Heavens!
I assume it was Dr. Watson's arrival that gave me away.
I couldn't possibly have betrayed you. I was completely taken in by your disguise.
My dear fellow, when the day comes that you see through one of my disguises, I shall indeed retire.
It was Master Sherlock's face, not yours, that betrayed him, Doctor. His concern for his friend. And yet, Holmes, I believe you'd have killed him rather than reveal yourself to be an impostor, just as you were prepared to kill the girl.
I'd pay any price to prevent you from turning Europe into a charnel house.
How I wish you were on my side. Together we could rule the world.
A world stripped of everything that I cherish.
A world which you have known as doomed. A time will come when men remember you as nothing more than a second Don Quixote.
There are worse fates.
How did you find this place?
I merely glanced at your boots during your visit to Baker Street. They were too clean.
What do you mean?
There's not a street in London where a man could live without getting horse manure on his boots. There was none on yours. Since you could scarcely make your home in a balloon, it was obvious that you'd set up headquarters in the underground.
How did you find the real Futeng?
Tut, Colonel. Even in a city with 3 million inhabitants, the gentleman was a trifle conspicuous.
May I ask what you've done with him?
Trussed him like a chicken and left him on the front steps of the Imperial Chinese Embassy. I gather that he's been rather unpopular there since his attempt to poison the Empress Dowager.
What are we going to do now, Moriarty?
Why, proceed with our sacrifice, of course.
I'd best get back to the yard.
I should prefer that you stay your departure. We may require your assistance in disposing of our guests.
I'm an old soldier, Moriarty, not an assassin.
Think of them as the casualties of war. Soon you'll be military dictator of the United Kingdom, the most powerful Englishman since Cromwell.
My congratulations, Sir George. You were paid a high price for your soul.
I'm willing enough to hang the bloody Reds and shoot a few Irishmen. But when it comes to murder,
Especially the murder of a priest?
The priest was an accident.
The Colonel somewhat exceeded his authority in dealing with Father Tichborne.
Dashwood, of course.
What possible
Restrain yourself, Miss Tichborne.
My mask! I'll take that gun, Professor. No, Sir George. Watson!
Right, I'll have it.
Look out, the girl!
No, Miss Tichborne!
Damn you, Colonel. This is from Chittick Tichborne.
You bitch! I'll kill you.
Dead.
Both of them?
Yes.
Chittick Tichborne is revenged.
White Queen takes Black King's pawn. Pawn takes White Queen. Checkmate. Your gun, if you please, Master Sherlock.
But Holmes...
Don't move, Watson. That is no ordinary walking stick.
Tonight our Satanist friends will offer up 3 sacrifices to Beelzebub. Fetch me the Emperor, Sir George.
I've got to get out of here, Moriarty. I've been here far too long as it is.
Fetch me the Emperor.
Very well.
Times I believe you're the devil himself, Professor.
That has been suggested.
Since I don't have my pipe, would you permit me a last cigarette?
Provided it is one of mine.
No, thank you. I'll do without.
Doctor?
No. Well, Holmes, old chap.
Here's your Emperor.
What an ungodly contraption.
The wooden mask is a replica of one which the inmates of certain British prisons are compelled to wear. It is said to be most effective in breaking the spirits of even the most case-hardened felons. In this instance, it has also served to conceal the identity of our august guest. Gentlemen, the Emperor. Unmask him, Sir George.
Your Majesty, have they injured you?
No, I am quite well. I think you would be more comfortable if you removed those ridiculous side whiskers and that silly moustache, Your Eminence.
Tosca!
But he's dead.
You fool, where is the Emperor?
At this moment, a closed carriage drawn by 6 fast horses is carrying His Apostolic Majesty to Dover, whence an armed yacht will bear him to Trieste.
You've had a busy time, Your Eminence.
Yes, and profitable.
Good God, Moriarty, where does this leave us?
A major setback indeed. Without the Emperor, the game is in stalemate. I must go elsewhere to set up new pieces on a different board. It will not surprise you to learn that I had the foresight to install an emergency exit.
A lift!
A one-man lift, Sir George.
Oh, good Lord.
Well, gentlemen, I must go.
To board an underground train which will carry you to safety, disguised as a blind street singer, a drunken old woman, or a nun with her rosary.
Precisely. I might add that I have taken the precaution of having every room and tunnel mined with dynamite, which will explode in exactly 17 seconds after my departure.
What about your followers?
Your Eminence may pray for their souls. But first, you had better pray for your friend Holmes. You have more lives than a cat, Master Sherlock. You would emerge from the rubble unscathed, just as you returned alive from the falls at Reichenbach.
Tut, Professor, your flattery embarrasses me.
Farewell, Master.
Watson, his gun!
Right.
I have it.
To our next encounter, Master Sherlock.
Well done, old chap.
Yes, indeed. What now?
Only 17 seconds to live.
The situation is desperate, but not hopeless.
14!
A very pretty little problem. Of course. For the Professor to be certain the explosion will occur in precisely 17 seconds, it has to be worked by the same switch as the lift.
4 seconds!
I touch this cigarette to the wire and...
Amen.
The professor was right to be suspicious of these cigarettes. They're a very special brand of my own manufacture, with acid instead of tobacco.
Thank God it's over. Holmes, you've saved Europe.
Saved Europe? I wonder.
With Franz Josef back on his throne, he'll make certain that his empire doesn't start a war.
The Viennese will go on living to the melody of a Strauss waltz, and dear old England will remain peaceful and free. The fireworks, the Baker Street irregulars, and right on time, too. A distraction for Moriarty's cohorts while we make our departure.
Good old Watson. You never fail me. You are the one fixed point in a changing world. And soon the world will change beyond our recognition. We have postponed the catastrophe, but it will come. If not in 5 years, then in 10. If not in 10 years, then in 20. The seas are rising, and soon there will be tidal waves such as we have never dreamed possible. And in the path of those waves there will still stand this island. We shall be tested as never before, but by God we shall endure. We shall endure even though this island be engulfed and swept away. This land of hedges and bright green fields could sink beneath the sea, and still there would remain forever bright in men's minds the memory of our England.
Sherlock Holmes read the future only too well on that night 19 years ago. I lay down my pen on what may prove to have been the darkest day in human history. Signed, John H. Watson, M.D. Dated this 4th of August, 1914.
And with the guns of August rumbling in the wings, we leave the once enchanted land, whose hope and glory were greater than we seem able to muster these days. Watson's date, of course, is that of the final adventure in the Conan Doyle canon, His Last Bow, and everyone has always agreed that's no better time to say goodbye to Holmes and his world. Perhaps not forever, though. There's always that blessed dispatch box. The Incredible Murder of Cardinal Tosca was adapted for radio by Alden Nolan and Walter Learning, based on their stage original for Theatre New Brunswick. John Neville starred as Sherlock Holmes, Dan MacDonald was Dr. Watson, Vernon Chapman, Professor Moriarty, and David Bulger, Sir George Atkinson, repeating their roles from the original Fredericton production. Colin Fox was heard as Cardinal Tosca, and Patricia Collins as Violet Tichborne. Those old Holmesian favorites, Mrs. Hudson and Inspector Hopkins, were played by Flo Patterson and Bruce Armstrong, with Michael Hartley Robinson as Colonel Dashwood and William Fulton as the constable. Audio engineering was by Keith DeLong, with sound effects by Harold Porter and Carl Falkenham, and production assistance by Deborah Payzant. The Incredible Murder of Cardinal Tosca was produced and directed for CBC Stereo from Halifax by Elizabeth Fox. Executive producer for Festival Theatre is John Douglas.
Maigret Hesitates is a detective novel by the Belgian writer Georges Simenon. When a series of letters, written on expensive stationery, arrive at Maigret's desk stating that a murder will take place, but that the writer is unsure as to who will die, who will do the killing, and when the killing will occur, Maigret's interest is piqued and he soon tracks the stationery down to the house of Émile Perendin, an eminent lawyer. But once there, tracking down clues to a crime not yet committed is not so easy, and when a murder does take place, the choice of victim surprises even Maigret.
Maigret hesitates.
Hello, Maitre Bouvier. It's Maigret here. Are you busy at the moment?
Never too busy to speak to you.
I'd like some information.
Confidential, of course.
Just between the two of us, that's right. Do you know a colleague of yours called Émile Parendon?
What in heaven's name can the judicial police have against Parendon?
I don't know. Probably nothing.
That's most likely. I haven't met Parendon more than a dozen times in my life. He hardly sets foot in court, and then only for civil cases.
How old is he?
Oh, no age. He might just as easily be 40 as 50. Huguette, look up Parendon's date of birth in the Bar Society yearbook. Émile. There's only one anyway. You must have heard of his father, who's still alive, or if he's dead, it's only recently. Professor Parendon, the surgeon at Linec, a member of the Academy of Medicine, of the Academy of Ethical and Political Sciences, etc., etc. A character. When I see you next, I'll tell you all about him. He came to Paris very young, with the hay still sticking out of his ears. He was short and stocky and looked like a bull. And he didn't just look like one.
Yeah, what about his son?
Oh, well, he's a jurist, really. He specializes in international law, particularly in marine law. They say he's unbeatable there. People come from all over the world to consult him, and he's often asked to arbitrate in delicate cases where big business interests are at stake.
What kind of a man is he?
Oh, small, gnome-like. Malicious people might say positively simian.
Is he married?
Thank you, Huguette. I have his age here. 46. Is he married? Oh, he certainly is married. Very well married, too. He married one of the daughters of Gatien de Beaulieu. You remember him. He was one of the most ferocious prosecutors at the time of the Liberation. Then he was appointed first president of the Supreme Court of Appeal. By now, he must have retired to his chateau in the Vendée. The family is very rich. As a matter of fact, Parendon practices from the old man's former apartment.
Where?
Oh, Avenue Marigny. An apartment house built to defy time, with apartments more like state reception rooms than to live in.
No. Huge ceilings, marble fireplaces.
Exactly.
Do you know anything else?
What else would I know? I've never had to defend them in court.
Well, thanks very much, Maitre Bouvier.
You can do the same for me sometime.
So, you don't think it's a deranged person, Patron?
No, the point. I don't think it's a deranged person. No specific threat. A sense of hopeless distress. Also, the envelopes of good quality.
But the expensive paper and the postmark, it was much too easy to trace.
Precisely. It's as if someone wanted to lead me to Maitre Parendon. And the language of the anonymous letter is so precise, which is rare in these cases. Oh, listen. Dear Divisional Chief Inspector, I do not know you personally, but what I have read of your investigations and of your attitude to criminals gives me confidence. This letter will astonish you. Do not throw it into the wastepaper basket too quickly. It is not a joke, nor is it the work of a maniac. You know better than I do that the truth is not always credible. A murder will be committed shortly, certainly within a few days, perhaps by someone known to me, perhaps by me myself. I am not writing to you so that the murder will not take place. It is, in a way, inevitable. But when it happens, I would like you to know. If you take me seriously, please put the following advertisement in the personal column of Le Figaro or Le Monde. K.R. I am waiting for a second letter. I do not know if I shall write it. I am very worried. Certain decisions are hard to make. I may perhaps see you one day in your office, but then we shall be on opposite sides of the fence. Yours faithfully.
By the feel of the paper, it could be mine. It's not easy to come by.
The last time my engraver had to order it from the manufacturer.
That's exactly what brought me here, Maître Perronton.
And my engraved letterhead was carefully cut off. A murder will be committed shortly, perhaps by someone known to me, perhaps by myself. It looks as if each word had been carefully chosen, don't you think?
That's the impression I got from the letter.
It is, in a way, inevitable. I don't like that sentence too much. There's something gratuitous about it, strange.
One detail struck me. The person who wrote this letter does not address me as Chief Inspector, as most people do, but by my official title, Divisional Chief Inspector.
Yes, I thought of that, too. Have you placed the advertisement?
It'll appear in Le Monde this evening and in tomorrow morning's Figaro.
Well, what may I offer you? The cognac isn't particularly good, but I have a 40-year-old Armagnac.
Oh, just a little, please.
My wife only lets me have a drop on special occasions. She says I have a weak liver. According to her, I'm weak all over, and I haven't a single healthy organ in me. Monsieur, may I ask you a rather personal question? How old were you when you began to understand men?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure that I do understand them.
Oh, yes, you do. And they know it very well. That's one of the reasons why they're almost relieved to confess.
It's the same with my colleagues.
I could prove the contrary, but that would only bore you. You studied medicine, didn't you?
Only for 2 years.
If what I've read is true, your father died, and since you were unable to continue your studies, you joined the police. If I've been asking these personal questions, it's because I'm passionately interested in Article 64 of the Penal Code, which you must know better than I do.
If the person charged with the commission of a felony or misdemeanor was then insane or acted by absolute necessity, no offense has been committed.
What do you think of it?
Oh, I'm glad I'm not a judge. This way I don't have to pass judgment.
Yeah, that's the kind of thought I'd like to hear you say. This is the sort of thing I want to know. Sitting in your office in front of a guilty man, or a man who is presumed guilty, are you capable of determining to what extent he is responsible?
Rarely. The psychiatrists afterwards.
My library is full of psychiatrists. The older generation, for the most part, answered responsible and went on their way with a clear conscience. But the more contemporary ones...
I know.
Do you speak English?
Very badly.
Do you know what they mean by a hobby?
Yes.
Well, my dear Monsieur Maigret, my hobby, my mania, as some people say, is Article 64. And I'm not the only one. And that famous article isn't found only in the French Penal Code. In more or less identical terms, it is found in the United States, in England, in Germany, and in Italy. There are thousands of us all over the world, no, tens of thousands, who have made it our goal to change this shameful Article 64, which is a relic of the past. It's not a secret society. There are official organizations in most countries with their magazines, their journals. Do you know the answer they give us? They tell us, the penal code is an integrated whole. If you tamper with one stone, the whole edifice runs the risk of collapsing. If one followed your wishes, the doctor and not the judge would have the task of judging. Come in, my dear. Let me introduce Chief Inspector Maigret.
The woman is about 40, elegant, very vivacious, with extremely restless eyes, and it takes her only a few seconds to examine me from head to toe. She doubtless will have noticed if I have a tiny speck of mud on my left shoe.
How do you do, Chief Inspector? I hope you haven't come to arrest my husband. With his poor health, you'd have to put him in the prison infirmary. I expect it's about one of our domestics.
No, I've had no complaint about any of them. Well, that'd be a matter for the local police.
What do you think of our Armagnac? I hope you only had a drop, darling. Well, gentlemen, I'll leave you to your own affairs. I was going to tell you that I won't be back before 8, darling. You can always join me at Hortense's after 7, if you like. Goodbye, Monsieur Maigret.
Madame?
I'm so happy to have met you. You're an extremely interesting man.
Did you get that?
Pardon?
You're an extremely interesting man.
Oh.
She's furious that you didn't say anything to her. Nothing would have given her greater pleasure than for you to have taken her for my daughter.
You have a daughter?
Yes, she's 18. She's at the Sorbonne, taking some classes in archaeology. And I don't know how long that will last. Last year, she wanted to be a chemist. I have a son, too, Jacques. He's 15 in the tertiary at the Lycée Racine. We ought to get back to your letter. Here's a sheet of my writing paper. Your experts will tell you if it's really the same paper, but I'm almost certain that it is. I'd better ring for her.
Yes, Maître?
Mademoiselle Vague, would you be so good as to bring me one of the envelopes we use for the tradesmen? You see, Chief Inspector, we pay our tradespeople by check at the end of the month. It would be pretentious to use our engraved envelopes to pay their bills, so we have ordinary white envelopes.
Here it is.
Thank you. You can compare this, too. If the envelope and the paper are both the same, you can be almost certain that the letter came from here.
Can you think of any reason that might have prompted someone to write this letter?
Reason? I wasn't expecting that word, Monsieur Maigret. I realize you must ask the question, but why reason? Undoubtedly everyone has some, consciously or not.
Do many people live in this apartment?
Living in? No, not many. My wife and I, of course.
Do you sleep in separate bedrooms?
How did you guess?
Oh, I don't know. I asked the question without thinking.
Well, it is quite true. We do sleep in separate rooms. My wife likes to go to bed late and stay in bed in the mornings, and I'm an early bird. In any case, you're free to go through all the rooms whenever you like. I may as well say at once that I did not choose the apartment, nor did I have anything to do with furnishing it. So I'm not quite in my own home, but rather in my wife's, or better still, in my father-in-law's. And only the books and the furniture in my bedroom and this study are my own things.
Your father is still alive, isn't he?
He lives almost opposite on the Rue de Mermesnil, in an apartment he furnished for his retirement. He's been a widower for 30 years. He was a surgeon.
A famous surgeon.
Yes. You knew that, too. But then you must know that his passion was not Article 64, but women. I've already told you about my daughter Paul and her brother Jacques. If you want to get on well with her, you'd better know that my daughter calls herself Bambi and insists on calling her brother Gus. I shall let everyone know that you are to have the freedom of the apartment and to answer all your questions truthfully.
I should probably come tomorrow, sometime in the morning, but I shan't disturb you.
Well, in that case, I shall disturb you.
There it is, Patron. The same envelope, the same carefully written block letters, the same writing paper with the letterhead cut off.
But the tone has changed. You made a mistake, Monsieur Maigret, in coming before receiving my second letter. Now they all have a bee in their bonnet, and that means things will be speeded up. From now on, the crime may be committed at any moment, and that will be partly your fault. I thought you were more patient, more reflective. Do you really think that you are capable of discovering the secrets of a whole household in one afternoon? You are more credulous and perhaps more vain than I had thought. I cannot help you any more. My only advice to you is to continue your investigation without believing what anyone tells you. With regards, in spite of everything, I retain my admiration for you.
And don't you think it's a kid having fun?
That's what my wife said last night.
What do you think, Patron?
No, I don't think it's a joke in poor taste. And besides, the idea did not occur to Maître Perrandon either. True, it's a well-ordered household. The butler received me with calm dignity. The secretary, with the funny name, is lively and pleasant. And as for Maître Perrandon, he's shown himself to be a most charming host, in spite of his strange gnome-like appearance. But, Le Point, in spite of all this, there was an undercurrent of unhappiness.
The secretary's name, according to your notes, is Mademoiselle Vague.
Mademoiselle Vague. Yeah, that's it. She works in a small room with green-painted filing cabinets around the walls, and she has the latest model electric typewriter.
Did you want to see me, Chief Inspector? I'm sorry I haven't got an armchair for you. If you'd rather, we could go to the library.
Well, I'd prefer to stay here. The Rolls-Royce out there in the courtyard that the chauffeur is washing, does that belong to Maître Perrandon?
No, to the tenants on the second floor. They're Peruvians.
Does Maître Perrandon have a chauffeur?
He has to, because his eyesight is too poor to let him drive.
What kind of a car does he have?
A Cadillac. Madame uses it more often than he does.
Do you know why I'm here?
I know that we're all at your service, and that we are to answer all your questions, even if we think they're indiscreet.
Did you see the letter?
I saw a photocopy.
What do you think of it?
What does Maître Perrandon think of it?
Same as you do.
What do you mean?
That he was no more surprised than you are.
Should I have reacted in any special way?
When someone announces that a murder is going to be committed in a house...
Well, that could happen in any house, couldn't it? Well, up to the moment when a man commits a crime, I expect that he acts like any other man. Well, that he's like any other man.
Otherwise, we would arrest future criminals in advance. That's true enough. I put the requested advertisement in. This morning I had a second letter. Read it.
Oh, I'm beginning to understand.
Is Perrondon's boy a practical joker?
Gus? He's quite the opposite. He's intelligent, but reserved. He's always at the top of his class at the lycée, though he never does any work.
What's he most interested in?
Music and electronics. He's built a complete stereo system in his bedroom, and he subscribes to, I don't know how many scientific magazines.
Has he any friends?
Sometimes a friend comes to listen to records or do experiments with him.
How does he get on with his father?
Gus admires his father, but, he admires him from a distance without letting him see it, and with a kind of humility. Well, you see, to understand them, you'd have to know the whole family, and your investigations would have to go on forever. Mm-hmm. You know, this apartment belonged to Monsieur Gaston de Beaulieu, and it's full of reminders of him. Well, he's been ill for 3 years and never leaves his chateau in the Vendée. But before that, he sometimes came to spend a week or two here. He still has a room, and from the moment he came in, he was master of the house again.
Monsieur Perrondon's father, the surgeon, does he still come?
Not very often. You'll have heard the stories about him. Everyone has. A few years ago, he was still a force of nature. And since he lives very near here, he often used to drop in for a visit. And the children adored him.
That didn't please everyone.
Particularly Madame Perrondon. Oh, there was no love lost between them. I don't know anything for sure. The servants have talked about a violent scene between them. At any rate, he doesn't come anymore, but Maître Perrondon goes to visit him every 2 or 3 days.
So the Gassins have beaten the Perrondon, in fact, eh?
More than you think.
I'm going to ask you an indiscreet question. Do you go to bed with Monsieur Perrondon?
In a sense, yes. We make love, but it's always on the run, so to speak, so the word bed isn't appropriate since we've never been in bed together.
Do the others know?
They must guess.
Why?
Well, when you know the apartment better, you'll understand. Let's see. How many people are around here during the day? Monsieur and Madame Perrondon and the 2 children, that's 4. René Tortue, Maître Perrondon's assistant, and Julien the office boy, and myself. That's 3 in the office, makes 7. Fernand the butler, the cook Madame Vauquin, the maid Lise, who sleeps in the apartment, and there's Madame Marchand, who comes in daily to do the cleaning. That brings us to 11. Not to mention Madame's Monsieur, who comes 4 mornings a week, or any of her 3 sisters, or her friends. Well, even though there are a lot of rooms, one meets everyone else, especially in here.
Oh? Why in here especially?
Because it's here everyone comes to get paper, stamps, paper clips. If Gus needs a piece of string, it's these drawers he comes to look in. Bambi always needs stamps or scotch tape. As for Madame, she is everywhere. Oh, yes, she goes out a lot, but one never knows if she's out or in. You'll have noticed that all the halls and most of the rooms are carpeted. You can't hear anyone coming. The door opens, and in pops someone you weren't expecting.
Has she ever surprised you with her husband?
I'm not sure. Once, not long before Christmas, when we thought she was at the hairdresser's, she came in at a rather delicate moment. We had time to look normal, at least I think we did. I'm not sure. She seemed very natural and began to talk to her husband about the present she just bought for Gus.
Has she changed her attitude to you?
No. She's nice to everyone. A kind of niceness that is peculiarly her own, a little as if she were floating around above us to protect us. I've secretly nicknamed her the Angel.
Don't you like her?
I wouldn't have her for a friend, that's what you mean.
Have you noticed that thin cut on the surface of your desk, still fresh? Such as your sharp erasing knife would have made, cutting a sheet of paper?
So you noticed the scratch, too. Isn't it awful to spoil such a lovely table?
Have you any idea who did it?
Anyone with access to this room. Well, that's to say, anyone at all. I told you, everybody treats this room as his own.
How does Bambi get on with her mother?
Badly.
Do they quarrel?
Oh, not even that. They hardly speak to each other.
On whose side is the animosity?
On Bambi's. Oh, you'll be seeing her. Although she's young, she passes judgment on everyone around her. And you can tell by her look that she's judging them cruelly.
Unjustly?
Not always.
Do you think that she knows about your relationship with her father?
I've sometimes wondered about that. I don't know. Anyone could have looked in on us without our knowing.
Does she love her father?
She's taken him under her protection. She seems to think of him as her mother's victim, and that's why she hates her for taking so much of the limelight.
In fact, Monsieur Perrondon doesn't play an important role in the family, does he?
Not an obvious role.
Has he never tried?
But perhaps he did a long time ago. He must have seen that the battle was already lost, and...
He retreated into his shell.
Oh, not as much as you may think. He knows everything that goes on, too. He doesn't ask questions like Madame Pardon. He contents himself with listening, observing, deducing. He's an extremely intelligent man.
I had that impression. Are you going to tell him what we were talking about?
Yes.
Even about your relationship with him?
Of course.
One question that you will find ridiculous, mademoiselle. Has the Perrondon boy...
Everybody calls him Gus.
Right. Has Gus ever tried to make love to you?
He's 15 years old.
I know. That's just the age to be curious about certain things, or for sentimental attachments, or passionate jealousies.
No! Oh, when I first knew him 5 years ago, he was a little boy who came in to ask me for stamps for his collection. A boy who scrounged incredible amounts of pencils and Scotch tape. And sometimes he asked me to help him with his homework. He would sit where you are and watch me with a serious expression.
And now?
He's half a head taller than I am, and he's been shaving for a year. If he scrounges anything from me now, it's cigarettes.
Aren't his visits any more frequent?
Quite the opposite. He leads his own life, apart from the family, except for meals. And he even refuses to appear at table when there are guests. He prefers to eat in the kitchen.
Is he ashamed of living in a house like this?
It's a bit like that.
Who, in your opinion, is the person who is being threatened? Why won't you answer?
Because you know perfectly well what I would say. Maître Pardon.
Oh, thank you. I think I've tormented you enough this morning. I'll probably come back to see you again.
Do you want to question the others?
Not before lunch. It's almost noon. I expect I'll see them after. Are there not thousands and thousands of potential murderers in Paris? Why has this one felt it necessary to warn me in advance? Through a kind of romanticism? To make himself interesting? Or does he want to be stopped before he does anything? How can he be stopped? I feel like shrugging my shoulders, jumping on the first open bus that comes along, and going back to the quay. To hell with the Perrondon. Back there, I might find some poor devil who is really killed because for him that's the only way out. Or perhaps a young tough from Pigalle, newly arrived from Marseille, or Bastia, who has done in a rival to prove he's a man. Chief Inspector Maigret, give me my inspector's room. Oh, Lapointe, anything new?
A phone call from Madame Pardon, Patron. She wanted to speak to you yourself. I had a terrible time getting her to understand that you have lunch just like anyone else.
What does she want?
She wants you to go and see her as soon as possible.
At home?
Yes. She'll wait for you until 4 o'clock. She has an important appointment after that.
With her hairdresser, no doubt. Is that all?
No, but the other might be a joke. Half an hour ago, the switchboard had someone on the line. A man or a woman, she couldn't tell which. An odd voice, or it might have been a child's. Anyway, the person was breathing hard in a hurry or upset and said very quickly, "Tell Chief Inspector Maigret to hurry." The switchboard had no time to ask anything. The person had already hung up. It isn't a letter this time, and that's why I'm asking myself.
Don't ask yourself anything. I'm not asking myself any questions. I'm not trying to play guessing games. But that doesn't stop me from being worried. Well, thank you, Lapointe. I'm going back to see what Madame wants. If anything comes up, you can call me there.
I'm a little ashamed, Chief Inspector, of having telephoned you. Or rather, of having telephoned...
Everything is blue.
subordinates.
The silk brocade covering the walls, the Louis XV armchairs, the upholstery. Even the yellow pattern Chinese rug has a blue background.
Forgive me.
Is it by chance that at 2 in the afternoon she's still wearing a housecoat? An elegant turquoise blue housecoat?
Do sit down. I'm a little jealous of the fact that you went to see the little Bog girl before you came to see me this morning.
Oh, I shouldn't have dared to disturb you so early.
Well, no doubt you've been told that I get up late and that I keep to my rooms until midday. It is true and it isn't. I lead a very busy life, Monsieur Maigret. And in fact, I start my days early. First of all, there is this big house to run. If I didn't telephone to the stores myself, I don't know what we should eat, nor what kind of bills we should get at the end of the month. Madame Vauquin is an excellent cook, but the telephone still makes her stammer. The children take up my time. Even though they are grown up now, I have to take an interest in their clothes, their activities. Well, if it weren't for me, Gus would live in jeans, a sweater, and sneakers all year round. Oh, it doesn't matter. I won't mention the charity work I'm involved in. Other people are content to send a check or attend a cocktail party, but when it's a question of real work, you won't find anyone... I imagine you lead a very busy life, too.
Well, you understand, Madame, I'm only a civil servant.
I must tell that to Jacqueline. She's the wife of the Minister of the Interior, one of my best friends. I may appear to be joking. Well, I am joking. But you must realize that that is only a front. In fact, Monsieur Maigret, I am tormented by what is happening. More than tormented. What did you think of my husband?
Oh, he's very pleasant.
Of course. That's what everyone says. I mean...
He's very intelligent, remarkably intelligent. I think that he's very sensitive, too.
If you were being quite honest, wouldn't you say he's oversensitive? Sometimes he frightens me. He's so introspective. He's a man who suffers. I've always known that. When I married him, there was a certain amount of pity in my love for him.
Oh? Why?
But you have seen him. Right from childhood, he must have been ashamed of his looks.
He isn't tall. Many other men...
Oh, look, Chief Inspector, let us lay our cards on the table. I don't know what his heredity is, or rather I know only too well. His mother was a young nurse at Laennec, a ward maid, really. And she was only 16 when Professor Parendon got her with child. Now, why on earth, since he was a surgeon, didn't he do an abortion? Did she threaten to expose him? I don't know. What I do know is that Emile was a 7-month baby. That is, a premature baby.
Most premature babies grow into normal children.
Do you think he is normal?
Excuse me if I don't...
Let me finish, please. Tomorrow, the next day, someday, you will perhaps be called here, and you will find yourself in front of a dead woman, who will be me. I forgive him in advance, because I know he is not responsible, and that medicine, in spite of all its progress...
Do you consider your husband to be a medical case?
Yes.
A mental case?
Perhaps.
Have you consulted any doctors?
Yes.
Doctors who know him?
We have several doctors among our friends.
And what exactly have they told you?
To take care.
To take care of what?
We haven't gone into details. They were not consultations, but social conversations.
Are they all of the same opinion?
Several of them are.
Can you give me their names?
It wouldn't be right to give you their names, but if you want to have him examined by an expert...
When you telephoned my office to ask me to come to see you, did you already have that in mind?
Have what in mind?
To ask me more or less directly to have your husband examined by a psychiatrist?
Did I say that? That is a word I never even mentioned.
But the thought showed clearly behind everything you said.
In that case, either you have misunderstood me, or I have expressed myself badly. What I said to you, what I'm repeating now, is that I am afraid. That there is fear running loose in this house.
And I'm repeating to you, fear of what?
I thought you would understand without my having to go into details. I'm afraid for myself, for him.
In other words, you're afraid that he may kill you? Or that he may commit suicide?
Put that way, it seems ridiculous, I know, when everything around us is so peaceful.
Forgive me if I seem indiscreet. Does your husband still have sexual relations with you?
Up until a year ago.
What happened a year ago to change the situation?
I came upon him with that girl.
Mademoiselle Vague?
Yes.
In the office?
It was so sordid.
And after that, you shut your door to him? Did he ever try to come in?
Only once. I told him what my reasons were, and he understood.
Didn't he insist?
He didn't even apologize. He went away, just like someone who has gotten off at the wrong floor.
Have you had any lovers?
What?
I'm asking you if you've had any lovers. These things happen, don't they?
Not in our family, Chief Inspector. And if my father were here,
In his capacity as judge, your father would understand that it is my duty to ask you the question. You've just spoken to me of an atmosphere of fear, of threat hanging over you and your husband. You suggest, in veiled terms, that I should have him examined by a psychiatrist, so it is natural.
Forgive me. I let myself get carried away. No, I have not had any lovers, and I never shall have.
Do you have a gun?
Yes? This drawer here. Be careful, it's loaded.
Have you had it long?
One of my friends, a woman with a really black sense of humor, gave it to me when I got married.
Aren't you afraid that the children playing around...
Oh, they rarely come into my rooms, and when they were younger, this gun was kept under lock and key.
And your shotguns?
They're in a case, and that case is in the coach house, without trunks, suitcases, and golf bags.
Oh, does your husband play golf?
I've tried to get him interested, but he gets out of breath by the third hole.
Is he often ill?
He has few serious illnesses. The worst, if I remember rightly, was an attack of pleurisy. On the other hand, he's constantly afflicted by little things. Laryngitis, influenza, head colds.
Does he call his doctor?
Of course.
One of your friends?
No, a doctor from nearby. Dr. Martin, who lives on the Rue de Cirque, the street behind this one.
Has Dr. Martin ever spoken to you privately?
No, he hasn't, but I've often waited to catch him as he left to make sure that my husband had nothing serious.
What did he say?
He said no. That men like him often live the longest. He told me about Voltaire, who
I know about Voltaire. Has he ever suggested that your husband consult a specialist?
No. Only...
Only what?
What's the use? You'll only misinterpret my words again.
Well, try anyway.
I can tell from your attitude that my husband has made an excellent impression on you, and, well, I was sure that would be the case. I won't say that he plays the part consciously. With strangers, he's a lively man, making a great show of stability. With Dr. Martin, he speaks and acts as he does with you.
Do you want me to send an inspector to keep permanent watch on the apartment?
The idea is quite ridiculous.
Not if I'm to believe your premonitions.
It's not a question of premonitions.
Not a question of facts, either.
Not yet.
Let's go over it again. For some time, your husband has been showing signs of mental derangement.
That's it, exactly.
He withdraws into himself, and his behavior worries you.
That is nearer the truth.
You're afraid for his life, or for yours.
I admit that.
Which one do you think it will be?
If I knew that, I would be slightly less worried.
Someone living in this house, or someone who has easy access to it, sent us at the key 2 letters announcing that a murder would take place shortly. I may add now that there's been also a telephone call in my absence.
Why didn't you tell me about it?
Because I was listening to you. This message, a very brief one, only confirms the ones that preceded it. The unknown man or woman said, more or less, tell Chief Inspector Maigret it will be soon. Do you still not want me to send you someone?
What good would that do?
What do you mean?
If something is going to happen, the presence of a policeman who will be stationed heaven knows where won't stop it.
Do you know that your husband has an automatic?
Yes.
Does he know that you have this revolver?
Of course.
And your children?
My children have nothing to do with this. Can't you understand that? They mind their own business and not ours. They have their own lives to live. You may go now. Forgive me for not showing you out. I don't know what I expected. Whatever is going to happen, let it happen. Go and see my husband, or that girl. Goodbye, Monsieur Maigret.
Do you want to see Monsieur Parendon?
No.
That's just as well, because he's in conference with 2 important clients. One has come from Amsterdam and the other from Athens. They're both ship owners. You look tired.
I've spent an hour with Madame Parendon.
I know.
Did you put through her call to the Quai des Orfèvres?
No, I didn't even know she'd phoned. It was Lise who told me when she came in and asked me for a stamp.
Who's Lise?
Her maid.
I mean, what kind of a person is she?
An ordinary girl, like me. We're both from the country. I'm from a small town and she's from a farm. Since I had some education, I became a secretary. And since she hadn't, she became a maid.
How old is she?
23.
Is she a devoted servant?
She does what she's told to do, very conscientiously. I don't think she's any desire to change her job.
Is she intelligent enough to have written the anonymous letters?
Certainly not.
Did you know that Madame Parendon came upon you with her husband about a year ago?
I told you that it happened once, but there have been other times when she could have opened and shut the door again without being heard.
Has Parendon told you that his wife has refused to have sexual relations with him since then?
They were infrequent anyway.
Huh? Why?
Because he doesn't love her.
Doesn't love her, or doesn't love her any longer?
Well, that depends on what you mean by the word love. He was no doubt flattered that she married him, and for years he forced himself to show his gratitude. Won't you sit down?
I think I'll have a look next door.
You'll only find Julien Beau there. Tortue's in court.
Well then, Julien Beau.
Patron, this one came by express mail, and it's written in a feverish sort of haste.
Same block letters, same envelope, same paper. Read it to me, Lapointe.
Dear Chief Inspector, when I wrote my first letter and asked you to give me your answer by means of an advertisement, I could not have imagined that you would charge headfirst into this case, about which I had hoped later to give you indispensable details. Your haste has spoiled everything, and now you yourself must realize that you are all at sea. Today you have provoked the murderer in some way, and I am sure that he will feel obliged to strike because of you. I may be wrong, but I believe it will be some time in the next few hours. I cannot help you. I am sorry. I do not hold it against you.
Looks as if things are heating up.
What do these people like?
Like everybody else. And like no one at all. Are you free tonight, Lapointe?
I haven't anything special on.
Then you'll go. You'll find the concierge in the lodge, a man called Lamure, who used to work on the Rue de Saussay. Spend the night in his room. Go up to the first floor from time to time. Get Lamure to give you a list of all the people living in the building, including the staff, and check all the points of entry.
I see.
Oh, what do you see?
Well, that this way, if anything happens, we'll at least have something to work on.
And if nothing happens, I'll look like a fool. I'm the man who has wasted the taxpayers' money. Good night. See you tomorrow. And someone will relieve you at about 8 in the morning. Maigret, yes?
Is that you, Patron?
Yes, it's me. Well, who is it?
The young secretary.
Dead?
Unfortunately.
Shot?
No, there was no noise. No one noticed anything. The doctor hasn't got here yet. I'm calling you before I have any details because I was downstairs when it happened. Maître Parendon is here beside me. He's quite shattered. We're waiting for Dr. Martin to arrive.
Was she stabbed?
More like butchered.
Well, I'll phone Meurs in the lab, and I'll also call the public prosecutor's office myself. I'll be right over. I'm overcome. As if it were someone in my own family. Of all the members of the household, Mademoiselle Vargue is the last I would have thought of as the victim. I'd taken a liking to her. I liked the way she spoke of her relationship with Parendon, mixture of jauntiness and matter-of-factness. I sensed that at the bottom, in spite of the difference in ages, she felt for him a passionate loyalty, which is perhaps one of the truest kinds of love. Then why was she the one to be killed? Who found her?
Young Julien Beau.
Where is he?
In the office at the end of the corridor with Parendon's assistant, Maître Tortue.
I'll go and see him. Was it you who found her?
Yes, sir.
Did you hear anything? Did she cry out? Did she groan?
Nothing. Excuse me. It's the first time. Just a minute, please. I'm sorry.
She was wearing an almond green spring dress, probably for the first time this season. After the blow, she must have slid out of her chair, and her body was doubled over, oddly twisted. Her throat was gaping open, and she'd lost a considerable quantity of blood, which was still warm.
Please forgive me. I can't help it. She came in here about 9:10 to bring me some documents to check. Incidentally, I can't remember where I put them. It's the proceedings of yesterday's session with notes and references. I must have left them in their office. No. Oh, they're on my table. She asked me to take them back as soon as I had finished. I went in and...
At what time?
I don't know. I must have worked for about a half an hour. I was very happy, very pleased with life. I like working for her. I looked around. I didn't see her. Then, when I looked down...
Was she still breathing?
No.
The men from the public prosecutor's office are here, Patron.
In a minute, Lapointe. Didn't you hear anything either, Maître Tortue?
No, nothing.
Were you in here all the time?
No. I went to see Maître Perrondeau for about 10 minutes about the case I dealt with in court yesterday.
What time was that?
I didn't look at my watch. About 9:30.
How was he?
Same as usual.
Was he alone?
Mademoiselle Vague was with him.
Did she go out as soon as you came in?
A few seconds later.
Who told you, Lapointe?
The butler, Ferdinand. He knew I was downstairs. I'd spoken to him. Dr. Martin is in with the body now.
Okay. Let's go.
Chief Inspector Maigret. Dr. Martin.
Doctor?
I'm sorry to have got here so late, but I had a patient in my office, and she took so long to get dressed. Well, she's dead, of course.
Did she die instantly?
Oh, she must have lived for a few seconds, let's say 30 or 40 seconds. Since her throat was cut, she couldn't possibly have cried out. It was possibly done with this erasing knife.
Would you close her eyes, Dr. Martin?
The photographer, Patron?
Oh, of course. No, don't do anything, Doctor.
I wonder if I shouldn't go and see Monsieur Pardon. Do you know where he is?
In his office, I imagine.
Does he know? Has he seen?
Probably.
What do you think I should do?
Go and see him if you think he might need you. Will you leave word with Lapointe where I can reach you?
Yes, of course.
Lapointe, you better see to her parents. Their address must be in her office. Look in her purse, too.
Yes.
Anyway, do what has to be done. Then draw me a plan of the apartment. Question everyone in it. Note down where each person was between 9:15 and 10, and take down everything everybody saw, everyone who went out and in.
Yes.
Oh, Ferdinand, come here for a moment. You'll help Lapointe with the floor plan. Tell me, Ferdinand, I suppose Madame Perrondeau is in her room?
Yes, Monsieur Maigret.
How did she react?
She didn't react at all, sir, because she doesn't know anything about it yet. As far as I know, she's sleeping, and Lise hasn't dared to take it on herself to wake her.
Hasn't Maître Perrondeau gone to see her either?
Monsieur hasn't left his office.
Hasn't he seen the body?
Oh, excuse me. He did leave it for a minute when Maître Tortue went to tell him. He took a quick look into Mademoiselle Vague's office and then went back to his own.
Thank you. Lapointe, come here to the window for a moment.
Yes.
See there, that six-story apartment house on the Rue de Cirque? Have a couple of men question the tenants whose windows look out on this side. They might have seen someone through the drawing room here between 9:30 and 9:45. They must also be able to look into the other rooms.
Are you going to arrest my father? Are you, Maigret? Whom are you going to arrest?
No one at the moment. Calm down, Gus.
Anyway, I can swear it wasn't my father.
Weren't you half expecting it?
If me was I expecting someone to cut Antoinette's throat? No.
Oh, did you call her Antoinette?
I've called her that for a long time. We were good friends.
Are you 15, Gus?
I'll be 16 in June.
Did you like Mademoiselle Vague?
I've told you already. She's with my friend.
Did you often go into her office?
At least once a day.
Did you ever go out with her?
Go out where?
To the movies, maybe, or dancing?
I don't dance. I've never been out with her.
Did you ever go to her apartment?
What are you trying to make me say? What are you thinking?
Do you know of Antoinette's relationship with your father?
Why not? Do you see anything wrong with that?
Doesn't matter what I think, but what you think.
My father is a free agent, isn't he?
What about your mother?
It wasn't any of her business.
Do you think that's the reason for what happened this morning?
I don't know.
Were you expecting something to happen?
I was expecting it and not expecting it.
Please express yourself more clearly. Your teachers at the Lycée Racine would not accept that for an answer.
I don't think you like me. You suspect me of something. I don't know what.
That's right.
Not of having killed Antoinette. I was at school.
I know. And I also know that you really worship your father.
Is that wrong?
Not at all. At the same time, you feel he's defenseless.
What are you insinuating?
Nothing bad. Your father's inclined not to fight, except in his work. He believes that everything that happens to him happens only because of his own shortcomings.
He's an intelligent and honest man.
Antoinette was defenseless, too, in her own way. In fact, there were two of you keeping guard over your father, she and you. That's why there was a sort of complicity between you.
We never said anything about that.
I'm sure you didn't. But you still felt you were on the same side. That's why, even if you had nothing to say to her, you never missed a chance of going to see her.
What are you getting at?
I'm there already. It was you who sent me those letters, Gus. And you who telephoned to the judicial police yesterday.
Yes, it was me. But how did you come to suspect me?
The letters could only have been written by the murderer or by someone who was trying to protect your father indirectly.
It could have been Antoinette.
She wasn't a child anymore and would not have gone about things in such a complicated or childish way.
I was expecting you.
I know, Madame Perrenton. Well, now I'm here.
Why did you have to see everyone else before me?
What if it was to give you time to think things over?
I don't need to think things over. To think what things over?
Things that have happened. The things that are inevitably going to happen.
What are you talking about?
When a murder has been committed, it is followed sooner or later by an arrest, a preliminary hearing, a trial.
What has that got to do with me?
You hated Antoinette, didn't you?
So you call her by her Christian name, too?
Who else does?
I don't know about my husband. He's probably capable of saying Mademoiselle very politely while making love.
How did you learn of the murder?
When I awoke, I rang for Lise. She brought me my breakfast tray. It wasn't until she opened the curtains that I saw her eyes were all red. I asked her why she'd been crying. She burst into tears again and told me that something dreadful had happened, and I at once thought of my husband.
What did you think might have happened to him?
Do you think that that man is strong? Don't you think that his heart might give out at any moment? When I learned the truth, I was shattered. What's going to happen to him?
To whom?
To my husband. You aren't going to throw him in prison. With his health...
Why should I want to put your husband in prison? In the first place, it's not my job, but the judge's. Furthermore, I don't see any reason at this moment for arresting your husband.
Well, whom do you suspect, then?
Why, Madame Perrenton, would your husband have killed his secretary?
Well, must there have been a reason?
One doesn't usually commit murder without a motive.
For example, if she were pregnant.
Oh, you forget that we no longer live in the times when unmarried mothers are looked down upon.
Well, I only used that as an example.
Think of another reason.
She might have been blackmailing him.
Why? Are your husband's business affairs shady? Do you believe he's capable of serious irregularity?
Oh, certainly not.
In that case, I can see no reason for blackmail.
Perhaps he was growing tired of a make-believe love.
Why make-believe?
Because of his age, his background, everything.
Is your love more real?
I gave him 2 children.
You mean you gave them to him as a wedding present?
Are you daring to insult me?
I have no such intention, Madame, but it usually takes 2 people to make children. That is to say more simply that you and your husband had 2 children.
Do you think my husband is innocent?
I don't think anyone is innocent a priori, just as I don't think anyone is guilty.
I'm waiting for your other questions, if you have any more to ask.
Listen to me, Madame. Contrary to what you may think, I'm not your enemy. I'm only a civil servant whose job is to look for the truth with the means at his disposal. I'm going to ask you a question, and I must ask you to think before you answer, to weigh the pros and cons. I must warn you that if it is later proved that you have lied to me, I shall draw my own conclusions, and I shall ask for a warrant for your arrest. Did you leave your rooms after 9 o'clock this morning? And did you go in the direction of the offices for any reason whatsoever?
No.
You did not go through the drawing room?
No.
You did not go into Mademoiselle Vague's office?
No. I may add that I consider these questions an insult.
It's my duty to ask them.
You forget that my father is still alive and...
Is that a threat?
I'm simply reminding you that you are not in your office at the Quai des Orfèvres.
Would you rather I took you there?
I dare you to.
Do you deny having killed Mademoiselle Vague?
You know perfectly well.
What do I know?
That my poor husband killed her.
I have another question to ask you. Have you handled your revolver since yesterday evening?
Why should I handle it? It's months. It's a long time since I... tidied up that drawer.
You handled it yesterday when you showed it to me.
I had forgotten that.
But since I handled it, my fingerprints will be on top of the others.
Is that all you have found out? Come in.
One of the gentlemen wishes to speak to Chief Inspector Maigret.
Oh, where is he?
Here in the hall. He told me it was extremely urgent, and so I took the liberty of bringing...
Will you excuse me, Madame Parendon? What is it, Lapointe?
She went through the drawing room twice this morning.
Are you sure?
You can't see it from here, but from the drawing room you can quite clearly. There's an invalid who sits almost all day at one of the windows on the Rue de Cirque.
A very old man?
No, he's about 50. He's interested in everything that goes on in this house. Judging by his replies to the other questions I asked him, we can believe what he says.
What time did he see her first?
Shortly after 9:30.
Was she going towards the offices?
Yes. He's more familiar than we are with the layout of the place. That's how he knows about Parendon and his secretary.
What was she wearing?
A blue housecoat.
And the second time?
She went through the room in the opposite direction less than 5 minutes later. One detail struck him. The maid was dusting at the far end of the room, and Madame Parendon didn't see her.
Have you questioned Lise?
Yes, this morning.
Didn't she mention the incident?
She says she didn't see anything.
Thank you, Lapointe. Would you be so good as to ring for your maid, Madame?
Do you need something?
Yes.
As you wish.
If the person charged with the commission of a felony or a misdemeanor was then insane or acted by absolute necessity, no offense has been committed. Article 64.
Did you ring, Madame?
Close the door, Lise. Shortly after 9:30, let's say at 9:35, you were dusting in the drawing room. Is that right?
Yes, it's true.
So you didn't see Madame Parendon going in the direction of the offices?
No.
But shortly after you got there, when you were at the far end of the room, you saw her going in the opposite direction. That is to say, going towards these rooms.
What should I do, Madame?
That is your affair, my child. Answer the question put to you.
Did someone tell you something?
Answered the question, as Madame has just advised you.
Will it mean that Madame is arrested?
It will confirm another witness's statement. Someone who lives in the Rue de Cirque and who saw both of you from his window.
Oh, well, there's no point in lying. It's true. I'm sorry, Madame.
If the chief inspector has finished with you, you may go.
Has she confessed?
I think you will have one more occasion to study Article 64, Mr. Parendon. She possibly intended to shoot her, then changed her mind and clubbed her with the gun, and the erasing knife was lying there on the table. Do you want to see her?
What could I say to her? Are you taking her away?
Well, in order to avoid the reporters and to give her departure some dignity, she will go in her own car. I've given instructions to the chauffeur. We shall arrive at police headquarters at the same time.
Maigret Hesitates by Frederick Burley. Produced from Toronto by Peter Donkin. Starring Bud Knapp as the Chief Inspector. Sandra Scott was featured as Madame Parendon. The other performers, Jack Anthony, Jarrow Dick, Martin Gorman, Corinne Langston, Frank Perry, Drew Russell, and John Scott. Musical decor and theme by Lucio Agostini. Sound effects, Bill Robinson. The program was recorded by Derek Stubbs. Cy Strange speaking.
The Al Capone of Membertou County. Meet Bonnie Marsden, a 45-year-old mother of 4 who hires herself out as a housekeeper when she loses her job as a loans officer in a small Nova Scotia town. But Bonnie ends up doing much more than housework as mystery, mayhem, and murder abound in her hometown of Membertou County.
The Al Capone of Membertou County.
for a partner tonight. Now we'll just hut you back up on the line, and you're back on duty for the day. Getting used to the routine? Good pop, Clyde.
Ben, breakfast is ready.
Sounds good to me. Damn strange. You hear anything about them changing the flight path to Greenwood?
No, but I don't think D&D would call me up to tell me. Why?
Helicopter crossing out back over our woodlot. I only saw it for a second, but kept hearing it. Didn't seem to be going anywhere. Sure smells good in here. Maybe there's somebody lost in the woods.
Well, I had the radio on. Bob Smiley didn't say anything on the news.
Maybe the pilot got lost. Melissa still sleeping?
Mm-hmm. She won't get much chance to sleep in once school starts back up again. I'll give her another half hour till it's time to get ready to go clean the Blanchards. I'll take her with me. I got a whole library of videos. What are you up to today?
Well, I don't need a phone call to tell me that roof job won't be on today. I promised Melissa I'd fix up that old desk you got in the yard sale. So I'll just potter away on it in the barn, maybe take out a pot of tea with a little something to go in it. Have myself quiet on a rainy day.
Sounds like a nice kind of day.
Sounds like a real nice day. Clyde, don't have to take your job, Dad.
Hello!
Stay clear of him. He's a pound dog. Just circle around his line. It'll probably hold. That's the kind of cable they use to tie down airplanes.
My name's Jim Taylor. This is my wife, Amy. Hello. We were wondering if you might do us a favor. We pay you for it.
Well, you could do me a favor right off and step into the barn before I get a soak to do her.
Thank you, Mr.
Marsden. Ben Marsden. You two can just unfold a couple of those lawn chairs there, and I'll get a fire going in the heater before you catch pneumonia. Follow the river or something?
No, the rain was enough.
Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing. Me and Amy drove up from the city for the day to scout out campsites for our holidays. Turned out my little two-wheel drive sports truck isn't as handy as I thought it was. We got onto a dirt road through the woods and got stuck in the mud.
Well, we saw some house roofs down the hill and figured our best bet was to walk down through the woods.
Were you the helicopter?
The helicopter?
There was a helicopter come over first thing this morning. I thought it might be somebody lost in the woods.
We only left the truck 20 minutes ago, so if they were looking for somebody, it wasn't us.
We thought we might be able to find a gas station with a tow truck. But then we come out of the woods into your yard, and sitting right there is that big four-wheel drive pickup.
Some days it's a four-wheel drive. Some days you got to start with a hammer.
I thought maybe you could tow us out. We'd pay you $20.
Well, I can give it a try. But first, we better get you two drowned rats to stop shivering. Tea's still warm, and I always keep an extra couple of cups out here.
Ben, tea'd be nice, but you wouldn't happen to have anything a little stronger to take the chill off Amy?
Just might. Got a little pint of spring water.
Spring water wasn't exactly what I had in mind.
This is Member 2 County spring water. It's 140 proof. Should warm you both up just fine.
Oh, yeah. You ever had moonshine before, Amy?
No, but it sure does the trick.
I haven't had a drink of shine in years, and it sure wasn't as smooth as this. Could I buy a bottle off you, Ben?
It's not for sale.
Well, I sure would like a bottle to take home. I'll pay top dollar.
This stuff isn't for sale, ever. It's just a little something that comes my way once in a while. But you're welcome to a refill. And I just might join you.
Oh, man, that's good stuff. I sure would like to buy a bottle to take back to the city.
I told you, it's not for sale.
Wouldn't that be fun, Amy? To show up your cousin from Cape Breton. What's his name?
Ian.
Yeah, always bragging about the stuff they make in the hills up there. I'd sure like to show him what real shine is.
It's not for sale. Oh, hell, there's hardly any left in the bottle anyway. Take it. And we better go get your truck towed out while you can still drive. Or maybe you better let Amy do the driving. Never seen anybody putting back the shine like you.
You gotta get it while you can, Ben.
pal. Okay. But you might as well just drink it out of the bottle.
You were going back to that roof job after lunch?
No, got it all crowned and done. Everybody wanted to rush before the sun hit them shingles.
Hello?
Mrs. Marsden, it's Corporal Kowalchuk. Is your husband there, please?
Sure, what?
Might I speak with him, please?
Sure. Ben?
Okay.
It's Corporal Kowalchuk.
What? I hope there hasn't been an accident. Hello?
Mr. Marsden, would it be possible for you to come into the detachment within, say, the next half hour?
I guess. Why?
I can't explain that over the telephone, but it will be better for you to come in voluntarily than if I have to come out and get you.
Will you step in here, please, Mr. Marsden? Please take a seat behind the table there.
Sure. And now, can you tell me what the hell this is all about?
I think it will save a lot of time and trouble if I just introduce you to some people. Would you step in here for a moment, please? Hello, Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Jim. Amy.
The people you know as Jim and Amy Taylor, Mr. Marsden, are agents of the Federal Excise Department.
Cute. Real friggin' cute.
We thought so. We'll be in the next room, Corporal, if you need us.
So, Mr. Marsden, you are being charged with trafficking in illegal contraband liquor.
I never sold them anything.
The agents are in possession of liquor they received from you and corroborate each other's statements that you received $20 from them.
That was for pulling their goddamn truck out of the mud.
Would you wait here a moment, please?
Don't look like I'm going anywhere.
As you may have heard, Mr. Marsden claims that that $20 was for pulling your goddamn truck out of the mud.
If you read our statements carefully, Corporal, you'll see they state clearly that we received contraband liquor from Mr. Marsden and that during the course of the operation he received $20 from us.
So a magistrate might assume, if you try any more of that sleazy crap in my jurisdiction, I will swear out a statement that you tried to inflate the charges.
This investigation is a lot bigger than Member 2 County, Corporal.
And your job is to assist us in any way you can.
My job is to enforce the law. I will proceed with the interrogation as per recommendations. You are being charged, Mr. Marsden, with possession of illegal contraband liquor.
I don't know anything about illegal contraband. What's it? Us hillbillies just call it moonshine.
You have the right to have a lawyer present during questioning.
Don't see much need. Seems pretty cut and dry.
All right. Would you tell me where you got the moonshine?
Sure. Old Morley Bishop.
Bishop. Do you know where I might find Mr. Bishop?
Sure. Pisiquid Village Cemetery. He went for a drive with somebody who drunk more of his stuff than he had.
And when did that happen?
About a year and a half ago, just before your time.
Are you expecting me to believe you had that bottle lying around for a year and a half?
It don't go bad.
I think you should take this a little more seriously, Ben. I know it seems like a penny ante charge whether you cooperate or not, but the excise department has powers that go beyond normal law enforcement.
Like what?
For one thing, they can confiscate your vehicle immediately, since it was used to transport illegal contraband liquor.
Here's a key. If they can start it, they can have it.
I have to do this, Ben. I've been given a list of names. I'm not asking you to say anything about any of these people. All you have to do is nod your head if you hear the right name, and that'll be enough for me to get a search warrant. Ruby McLean? Harlan Wade? Neil Morris?
You can read out the whole Member 2 County phone book, Corporal. I ain't no damned informer. I guess you better call up legal aid and tell them to appoint me a lawyer after all. have to go through the whole damn thing again once legal aid gets a lawyer out here. I'm sorry, Bonnie.
For what?
For being so goddamn stupid. I should have listened to Clyde.
How's that?
He went nuts as soon as he got a whiff of those two. Gonna be a great dog. When we go by there, Irving, could you pull in for a minute?
For the payphone.
Yeah, I won't be on it long. But how was anybody supposed to guess the Federal Excise Department would put on this whole complicated undercover operation just because there's a couple old fellas in the hills making a little stuff for people that can't afford the liquor store? They seem to figure that I'm the Al Capone, number 2 county. Damn it, Bonnie. The whole reason there's supposed to be laws and law officers is to make a decent place to live. Who wants to live in a place where anybody that offers hospitality to a lost stranger is a fool? Well, guess that makes me a fool.
You're not a fool, Ben. You're just unlucky.
Right. Thanks. I'll be there.
Does he sound like he'll be any help?
Well, he sounds like he's fresh out of law school, but he's already got the truck back.
Sounds like they're backing off.
Well, maybe not. The lawyer says the excise people had cleared it through a magistrate, that they had good reason to put a sting on me.
What reason?
Seems they don't have to tell my lawyer what it is, because it's part of a ongoing investigation. Something damn strange is going on. But if I go around trying to find out what, I'll likely have relays of excise agents following my truck and taking down the names of everyone I talk to.
Don't you think you're getting a little paranoid, Ben?
Paranoid? Like imagining the Federal Excise Department would send out 2 agents and God knows how much backup to catch a guy who had a pint of moonshine in his barn?
You can't think of any other reason why they'd come?
No, I can't think of any other goddamn reason. And that's God's honest truth. Bonnie?
I'll try and see what I can find out. Good morning, Ruby. I was just passing by and thought I'd see how you were doing. Is Albert still up in Foro, or is somebody else going to give you a hand with all that fire? Well, sure, George. I'd love a cup of tea. I guess you heard Ben's in a bit of trouble. The Mounties seem to think he's the Al Capone of Member 2 County. Kidding, Muriel. What a sin. Well, I thought maybe I'd drop by for a cup of tea and bring Melissa along if you don't have too many kids on your hands already.
Sure, I'd love a cup of tea, Lachlan. But go ahead and finish with your motor. I'm not throwing you off.
A videotape. I don't get it, Barbara. How could someone get a videotape from... Sure, I'd love another cup of tea.
Did Melissa go right to sleep?
Yeah, for a change.
Well, I think I finally found out what happened. Maybe.
I was wondering if you were ever going to say anything.
I was wondering if my kidneys were going to give out. Oh, I'd found out a lot of possibilities. I found out more about the community we live in the last 2 weeks than in 45 years. You know that nice young couple from away that bought the old Collier place?
Yeah. I know them to see them.
They're in the Witness Protection Program. I don't know from where. Seemed to me they might like to keep up their informant credentials. And then there's Liz Morgan down the road. Turns out she's tried to have every one of her aunts and uncles arrested for anything from mail-ordering pornography to not reporting their bingo winnings to welfare. And did you know that last month, Harlan Wade had 3 police cars in his driveway for about 2 hours, but no charges were ever laid?
I wouldn't like to think that Harlan...
I don't know if you can trust anybody anymore. But I didn't want to think that either, so I didn't say anything till I found out if there might be a likelier possibility. There is. You know a kid named Billy Vickers? Maybe 19 or 20 years old?
I don't think so.
Well, there was a hydroponic marijuana operation up in Mertonville that got raided a couple of months ago.
Yeah. I've done some work there.
You what?
Well, fixing up the front porch and repointing the chimney.
Did you know it was a grow house?
And nobody said so, but it doesn't take much brains to figure out. A couple of jobless young fellows from the city renting a place out in the country with a barn where the loft windows are boarded up, but there's always light coming through the cracks. A buried power line that don't seem to be connected to the meter. It was none of my business. But those two young fellows weren't 19 or 20, more like 25.
Billy Vickers didn't live there, but he was there when the police showed up.
A gopher, right? Local kid who was always going in and out of the barn.
He was in jail since then. His lawyer waived bail.
Waived bail?
Well, his trial came up last week, and they let him off for time already served and for other considerations. It seems that while Billy Vickers was in jail, he made a videotaped confession. A long confession.
Wouldn't figure a kid like that had much to confess.
From what they say, he was confessing for a lot of other people, too. The lawyers for those other people have a right to review all the evidence, including that videotape.
Oh, then why couldn't my lawyer?
Maybe it isn't evidence in your case. They already have all the evidence they need. But if that tape is the justification for the excise agents coming after you, the ongoing investigation, maybe there's something on it your lawyer could use to say that they had no good reason to try and set you up.
Maybe. If he could get his hands on it.
He can't, but we could.
How?
Well, somebody in one of those other lawyers' offices made a copy of that videotape, then handed it over to her cousin or somebody. There's copies of the copy going for $200 apiece.
$200? The kid doesn't even know me.
They say your name is on the tape.
Who says?
Wanda Birch, down in Butcher's Corners. She never gives anything away except hints.
She wants $200.
Well, I know it sounds like a lot of money, but it might help get your case thrown out of court.
Or it might not.
But I want to watch the movie, too.
It's not a movie you'd like, honey, and it's way past your bedtime. Go to sleep now.
Here, you run it. My hand's all sweaty.
They say it's not the whole tape. There was a bunch of stuff at the beginning about in the presence of his lawyer and all that.
Now, Billy, I have a list of names.
They always do.
Most of them we already have plenty of evidence against, so it isn't like you're being an informer.
We just want to have your cooperation.
You know I'm trying to cooperate, Amy.
I know that, Billy. If you recognize one of the names but don't want to say anything, just nod your
Is she
head.
one of them?
One of the ground rats?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other one's the other one.
Morris Eubanks.
No.
Ruby McLean.
Sorry, but I don't know.
Ben Marston.
Oh, yeah.
Ben Marston.
Sure. Big Ben Marsden. He was up at the grow house a few times doing some yard work. He does that kind of handyman stuff, but I think it's just a front.
A front for what?
Well, after he'd been there one day, one of the other guys said, "That big old dumb country boy has got his fingers in every scheme in Member 2 County.
I wish.
And he always had a little moonshine with him for his breaks.
Do you think he has a still?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if he had 5 or 6 around the county with other people making for him to sell. You can make a lot of money, can't you? Trucking moonshine into Halifax for bars to mix with their vodka or gin or...
That's right, Billy.
Does Ben Marston have a grow house, too?
Oh, I don't know about a grow house, but he's probably got a few acres of woods behind his place, eh? All those old guys do. That's probably where he grows it.
The helicopter.
I mean, back there in the woods.
The helicopter
Not
was
far
hovering
enough back
around
for
that
cars to be
morning.
Going through there.
They probably didn't know about country hours and thought we wouldn't be awake there.
Property. Put up
They
no
were
hunting,
looking
no
for
trespassing
Ben Marston's
signs.
marijuana plantation.
How many tens of thousands of dollars did they spend trying to stop me from drinking liquor with no taxes on it?
But now they have to convict you of something or look foolish.
Tom States.
I heard the name somewheres, but
Orland Milgard.
no.
You might as well turn it off.
Jack Burton.
Just run it back a couple seconds, okay?
Jack Burton.
Oh, yeah. He's the boss of it all. Fronts the money to set up grow houses all over Nova Scotia and maybe New Brunswick.
Okay.
Then buys and gets...
Jack Burton. Somebody you know?
Not hardly. Just enough to know that poor dumb kid should have stayed in jail.
Why? Is Jack Burton innocent, too?
No. Jack Burton's not innocent.
If you really can't finish your sandwich, you can take the rest out to Clyde.
Okay. Lunchtime, Clyde.
Hello?
Mrs. Marston, it's Corporal Kowalczyk.
You want Ben to come down to the detachment again? Some other scared kid make a statement that Ben Marston's a big-time racketeer?
How did you know about that?
Same way I found out Frida had killed Ray Fletcher, or who was beating up Judy Barclay.
Bonnie, I don't like this any better than you do. But Ben did commit a crime.
And those two scummy excise agents didn't.
Not according to the law. I just wanted to make sure Ben got a message he'll probably get from his lawyer anyway, but just in case. The case before his tomorrow is going to plead guilty after all, so he should be there first thing in the morning.
Well, thanks for letting us know.
Can't sleep?
Not yet.
I was probably going to wake you up in a few minutes anyway.
Again?
I've been thinking about something. Have been since I last talked to the lawyer. He figures it'll be a fine of $500 or 2 weeks in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Bonnie, we don't have $500. Especially since spending $200 on that damn tape.
We've got almost $700 in the bank.
Now, that's the mortgage and groceries.
Mona at the bank would put a loan through in a minute.
We can't carry any loan. 2 weeks sentence. I'd only served 10 days. I wouldn't make $500 in 10 days out working. And what bits of work I got lined up will still be waiting when I get out.
You can't go to jail.
Well, I sure as hell don't want to. Only jail time I ever done was overnighters when I was a kid. But it's only 10 days. I probably won't even notice where I am the first week or so. I'll be busy going through withdrawal.
How's that?
Bonnie, I'm an alcoholic.
What? That's ridiculous. I haven't seen you falling down drunk in years.
I haven't been. Just been on... What's the dog food label say? Basic maintenance. You must have smelled it on me when I climbed into bed every night.
A lot of people always take a drink at the end of the day.
It wasn't just the end of the day. Ever since I got laid off, and what work I do get is all in my own stick, there's always a bottle of shine in the barn or in my toolbox. If I go too long without a nip, my hands start to shake.
I never noticed.
No, it wasn't anything to notice. As long as I stayed on basic maintenance. It just got to be a habit. It keeps me from losing my patience. Maybe it's not such a bad thing that I'll have to dry out in a place with guards and bars on the windows.
You won't be the only one going through withdrawal.
Huh?
It's almost 30 years since we went 10 days without seeing each other.
Well, we'll see each other. Hell, 10 days. They might even let me serve it in the little Mountie lockup just down the road.
I wasn't talking about visiting hours. I should have said 10 nights.
Well, just last year, when you were doing all that hospital time and out of commission in between, that was a lot longer than 10 days.
That was different.
Why?
Because I was the one who was out of commission. How much do you drink, Ben?
Oh, probably a couple of pints a week of the heavy stuff. Some of the old fellows around here had called me a piker. Who knows? By the time they've dried me out in jail, I might come out a different man.
I've never wanted a different man.
Benjamin Marsden, the court appreciates that your guilty plea has saved a good deal of time and public money. Although nowhere near as much public money as you and your unnamed friends have stolen over the years by producing and consuming illegal contraband liquor. The federal agent's report makes it clear that you've been very uncooperative in every area except your guilty plea. You may be a very small fish in a very large pond, Mr. Marsden, but it's a scummy pond in need of cleaning up. I sentence you to pay a fine of $2,000 or serve 2 months in provincial jail. Next case.
You've been listening to The Al Capone of Member 2 County, Episode 12 of Clean Sweep, written by Elt Silver. In the cast today, Deborah Allen was Bonnie, Richard Donat was Ben, Mike Pellerin was Corporal Kowalchuk, Ashley Swain was Melissa, Frank McKay was Jim Taylor, Margot Sampson was Amy Taylor, Joseph Wynn was Billy Vickers, and Richard Sercombe was the judge. The music was composed by Scott McMillan and David McIsaac. The performance featured Gordon Stovey, Jamie Gatti, and Andre Lacroix, together with the two composers. The recording engineer was Pat Martin, with sound effects by Dermot Kenny. The associate producer was Peggy Hemsworth. The play was produced and directed in Halifax by Bill Howell, the executive producer of the Mystery Project.